Just barely got it in. Let me see here. I really need to get this. Let me see. Let me see. All right. Took 3 minutes. Holy shit. 3 minutes. Wow. That's a long time. All right. I'll just get this going here. Well, what they is, I just get started. What they is that I've been watching JLR Investigates, and first of all, I first have to say, I'm not on Trump's side, not MAGA on everything, except for when it comes to a lot of stuff with, Dodge and illegal immigration and stuff. I'm mostly for that stuff. There is stuff that I totally disagree with Trump on. Oh shit. Oops. I forgot. Can't believe I did that. Let's see here. Yeah, there it is. There. Yeah. All right, cool. Okay, so I have to put that out. That I'm not for one political side or anything. I agree with Trump is doing on immigration and Dodge and stuff like that. And by constitutional law, these judges are obstructing. I want to do this by law, not by people's opinions. And this is what I've been wanting to do for a long time, because I was in JLR's chat this morning, and there covers natural immunity that politicians have, like AOC. Now, if you're law enforcement and you're person of power, judges, stuff like that, politicians, you have what they call natural immunity by law, where you can say just about whatever you want. You can lie about the other side, you can make up stuff on them, which they do, and you can get away with it without being thrown in jail, where you or I would be thrown in jail for stuff. I wanted to do this in a lawful way, by law. I don't want people's opinions. I want the facts by law. And this is what I'm doing. So, before that, like I said, I'm not on any political side. I just have issues that I voted for Trump on, and there's issues that I don't like about him. So let's go.
Here's the bad news. America's being held hostage by unelected dictatorial judges in black robes. And these judicial tyrants are driving the nation into a constitutional crisis, as noted just yesterday by Scott Jennings. Let's be clear. Because these...
I have to give a shout out to Law of Self-Defense. He does excellent work. There's stuff that I disagree with him on, like anybody else. And there's a lot of stuff he can help you get out of bad situations. He knows about the right, different state by state carry laws with guns, the Second Amendment, self-defense. He covers all this stuff. It's very cheap to join his club, and you get factual, lawful information that hundreds of thousands of people are rotting in prison for this now. I should say tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands. And that's to the right to defend yourself. And it's different in each state. But I was about to say, I lost my train of thought.
Orders infringe upon the core and plenary powers of the executive branch, and they are issued by mere trial judges of the inferior courts of the United States. These orders are constitutionally unlawful, and the judges issuing them are acting beyond their legal authority.
Judges do get to say whether the executive is complying with the law or not. That's been the case for decades, hundreds of years.
Well, I think there's a difference between saying whether you're complying with the law and then you have these individual district court judges setting effectively broad federal policy that is specifically reserved for the President of the United States. I think we do have a constitution.
And let's keep in mind, every other president has done what Trump is doing. And these stupid idiot judges never did anything. It never got to court. Because even Obama has said on X Twitter, I invite people to look this up, he said, I'm not going to let any judge tell me how to run this country. This is what Obama said. People can look it up on X Twitter. This is very factual. This is what every president does. And what CNN is doing is total bullshit. They're trying to make like Trump is doing all this illegal stuff. It's not. Every president has the authority, has the power to do this, except for when it comes to stuff like Amendment 14 that requires an act of Congress. And we're going to get into this
Constitutional crisis, and it's being caused by these judges. They're not here to tell us. They're not here to tell us how to spend the money. They're not here to set broad federal policy. That is the president's job as elected by the people. These judges are supposed to be settling discrete, specific matters, not policy setting. I think Vance is right. I think Trump has a point, and these judges want nothing more to continue the lawfare against Trump.
But there's also good news. It doesn't have to be this way. Regaining our liberty is readily within our grasp. And in this video, I'll outline exactly what can be done. I am, of course, attorney Andrew Branca for the Law of Self-Defense. And if you like our content, then I'd like to ask you to hit those like and subscribe buttons and ring that bell, as it really helps us out. To begin with, let's start with a question of first principle. Could America, being held hostage by a few unelected trial judges, really be the intent of the Constitution our founders handed down to us? Is it at all feasible that the founders meant for the entire nation to be tyrannically ruled by a few trial judges claiming near limitless power to order every facet of government to do as they instruct? The very same founders who created our nation by securing victory in a desperate war against the most powerful tyrannical power then on the globe? The answer is hell no. The actions being taken by these tyrannical judges would strip America of any semblance of representative government, leaving us a tyranny run by judges and bureaucrats. I've read my U.S. Constitution pretty carefully, and I don't remember anything like that in it. And I'm not the only one to...
It's never happened before. This has never happened before. It really pisses me off. Because whether you like a sitting president or not, that isn't what it is with the Constitution. Each president, whether you like him or her or not, has the constitutional authority to do this. What they're doing is part of the election. This is what we vote in presidents for, whether we like them or not, or whether we wish we would have voted for them or not. This is protected under the Constitution, which is separated under different branches: the judicial, the legislative, and the executive.
Recognize this obvious political reality. Here's Elon Musk in the Oval Office with President Trump yesterday, speaking to the media.
If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy. So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected.
And like I said, these judges are crooked as fuck. Okay? They have their daughters or their wives getting money from U.S. aid. They're making money off themselves. This is about politics. And this is about making money on this stuff. And the judges have no right to interfere. This is called, it's corruption, is conflict of interest, what they call it legally. They do they have no authority to do what they're doing. And these are crooked judges. And the thing is, he should have ignored the judges. He should have. I would have. But
elected representatives, the president, the House, and the Senate, decide what happens, as opposed to a large unelected bureaucracy.
Hey folks, I want to take just a moment to invite you all to our upcoming live and 100% free Law of Self-Defense Hard to Convict webinar. This free webinar teaches you how to be hard to convict if you're ever compelled to use force in defense of yourself, your family, or your property. The webinar is live streamed by me personally, and there's plenty of opportunity for Q&A. Best of all, it's 100% free, but we do limit seats to allow for adequate Q&A. So I urge you to grab your seat right now by signing up at lawofselfdefense.com/hard.
Guys, got to join that. Everybody.
So where do we stand now? Well, the bureaucracy that seeks to rule us, having lost control of all elected levers of governmental authority, is now using lawfare. Tyrannical judges are issuing decrees at the rate of several a day. Just a few of the executive initiatives of President Trump that have been summarily stopped, usually with an ex parte temporary restraining order at which no member of the Trump administration was present to argue its side, include clarifying birthright citizenship, blocked, pause in federal spending during audits, blocked.
You have to constitutionally, you have
Offer
to
of
be
early
constitutional
retirement to federal
for that.
employees, blocked. Auditing
Congress
of
has to do
Treasury
that.
accounts by the Treasury Secretary, blocked. Closure of USAID, blocked. Reducing NIH grant payments to academic centers for overhead, blocked. Managing government-owned websites, blocked. Trump firing an administration lawyer hired by the previous administration, blocked, and he's ordered to use that hostile lawyer. And there are, of course, more, and more coming every week, pretty much every day. Keep in mind that Trump has so far been in office barely 3 weeks. And all of these judicial...
The thing is, I don't like either political side. If you're into politics, I think people should be vetted for being on a political side, especially in our justice system that we have. I've been through it. I know there's a lot of innocent people that don't belong in jail, in prison. I know that from self-defense and stuff. There's a lot of problems. And with these organizations, the same. And you should be allowed to be on the bench. You should be allowed to be doing any type of legal work or these organizations if it is politically skewed or if you're associated with a political party. I believe those people need to be purged out. Government should not be paid for any political agenda, sociological agenda, so much, and you keep politics out. You keep politics and religious stuff out of the government, 80. It's just, there's so much corruption. And this goes for either side, all sides.
Orders are blocking broad initiatives on which he campaigned and which fall squarely within the core and plenary powers of the president. Let's be clear. Because these orders infringe upon the core and plenary powers of the executive branch, and they are issued by mere trial judges of the inferior courts of the United States, these orders are constitutionally unlawful, and the judges issuing them are acting beyond their legal authority. So here's the two-step plan to address this judicial tyranny. Step 1, the executive branch declares correctly the orders an unconstitutional overreach by these inferior trial court judges and ignores them. Step 2, Congress, the legislative branch, both backs President Trump and holds these inferior court judges accountable for their unconstitutional overreach. Each of these judges, every one of them, without exception, judges with a hunger for tyrannical power are ill-suited for their proper and limited role of settling disputes in a well-ordered society. Sound illegal or far-fetched? It's not. The Constitution itself empowers President Trump to end the judicial tyranny holding America hostage. And in a few moments...
The thing is, these are separate branches of government. People need to really educate themselves. Because people are not thinking about law and how the Constitution was made. They only want the opinion that suits their own interest. That's not how the Constitution was made. There's separation of powers, separation of branches for a reason. Because the judicial is not supposed to tell the executive what to do all the time. There's a process where the legislative has to go in and legislate laws, make amendments, stuff like that for different purposes. Also, is to keep everyone in line. And if the president does something too bad, you go to Congress, you get them impeached. There is a process. And we have separation of powers because of this kind of corruption that is going on.
Moments, I'll also share with you how President
power.
Trump's just announced current strategy for dealing with these judges' lawless orders aligns with this plan. It's worth remembering that these tyrannical judges, with the audacity to frustrate the political will of the American people as expressed in the most recent election, are entirely subordinate under our Constitution, not just to the Supreme Court, but also to Congress. Indeed, especially to Congress. In fact, the Constitution distinguishes these federal trial courts from the Supreme Court using the literal term inferior. Every federal court below the Supreme Court is properly understood to be an inferior court. And these inferior courts are not the creation of the Supreme Court. They are the creations of Congress. Congress brings the inferior courts into existence, and Congress can obliterate the inferior courts at its pleasure. And there's no role or authority for any judge outside a court. Let me say this again, because very few people seem to realize it. The inferior courts, meaning our federal court system, but for the Supreme Court, are created by Congress, the second branch of government, not by the Supreme Court, our third branch of government.
There's a big difference.
If any of this sounds crazy to you, that's only because the people who control America's educational system have a vested interest in not educating our citizens on how our Constitution actually structures the governance of our...
They're too dumb and stupid. They don't know law either that much. Very few do. I mean, actually, I should say that some teachers, actually, they know that there's separation of powers. They know that there's different branches, but few do know about, the process of how they work and don't work, what, they cannot circumvent. The Supreme Court is to make the final decisions with these things. But the lower courts, these federal ones, cannot be telling the president what to do. The executive branch was there to do the will of the people as well. This is why we vote. Now, like I keep saying, on both sides, I don't like either side, really. I'm not a tool or a weapon. There's stuff on each side that I like, dislike. But,
our nation. Maybe worth asking why they would do that. That the inferior courts, meaning all courts subordinate to the ultimate superior court, the Supreme Court, that the inferior courts are creations of Congress is laid out in plain text in the Constitution. Article 1 defines the role and authority of the legislative branch of Congress. And in Section 8, Powers of Congress, Clause 9 reads, quote, Congress has the power to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, close quote. These are all the inferior courts of the United States, all the federal courts but for the Supreme Court. You may be wondering, but what about Article 3 of the Constitution that creates the judicial branch? Isn't the judicial branch a co-equal branch of government to the legislative, Article 1, and the executive, Article 2 branches? Well, it certainly is. But what does Article 3 actually create? Well, let's take a look.
Yes.
Article 3, Section 1 reads, quote, the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, close quote. But what about all the lower courts? Well, that same sentence continues. And in such inferior courts as that Congress may from time to time ordain and establish.
Which they do.
More proof that all inferior courts subordinate to the Supreme Court are creations of Congress, not of the Supreme Court itself. So while the Supreme Court is a co-equal branch of government alongside the legislative branch and the executive branch, the inferior courts are not. They are inferior to the branches created by the Constitution. To put it another way, perhaps in a more obvious frame, the Supreme Court possesses authority as a co-equal branch of government that the mere inferior courts do not. And even in the context...
You see, where each is unto itself, each one is there to keep the other from gaining too much power. That's what it is.
Text of the Supreme Court itself. Literally the highest, the Supreme Court. That status as a co-equal branch of government still does not give it unlimited authority to order around the executive branch. Does anybody imagine that the president could tell the Supreme Court how to rule on a case? Of course not, because settling disputes is a core and plenary function of the judiciary outside the reach of the executive branch. Just as the administration of government is a core and plenary function of the executive branch and outside the reach of the judiciary.
Yep.
Indeed, any president who subordinated himself to lawless orders from the judicial branch would be failing in his constitutional duty under Article 2, Section 3 to, quote, take care that the laws be faithfully executed, close quote. And if the power of the Supreme Court to order about the executive branch within the scope of its core and plenary administrative powers is so limited, as it must be in any constitutional order, then certainly the power of the inferior.
And that's where Congress, that's where the legislative branch, Congress, would have to go in and say, this is unconstitutional. They have to go in the judicial and the legislative. Circumvent presidential executive. They're all there to keep each other from getting greedy and power hungry. That's the thing. And like I said, anybody that knows real law, real constitutional law, and I just get pissed off at JLR chat and stuff like that. They don't know everything. They don't. So I should, but it's like, people just ignoring the facts that I was putting in and stuff. So that's going to piss me off. Where Trump could have just ignored the course and said, F you, say, F you, I'm doing it anyway. He could have done that. And you're talking about, you have all this criminal activity happening with the USAID and with ICE, the illegal immigration happening. Yeah, politicians could be treason against terrorist organizations with cartels. That is treason. And these politicians should be arrested.
Your courts to order about the executive branch must be even more profoundly limited, if the inferior courts possess any such power at all. It may well be that some order delivered by the Supreme Court to the president may be valid, if, for example, the president were acting in a demonstrably unconstitutional manner. But even if so, it still does not follow that the inferior courts created by Congress have any such authority with respect to the executive branch at all. You may be wondering then, but surely the executive branch...
That's where Congress and the Supreme Court, both branches together, are supposed to go in.
Can't be completely above the law, standing by itself, completely independent of the judicial branch. There are 3 co-equal branches of government for a reason. Surely they all have a role in checking each other. Otherwise, why would we call our 3-branch system a system of checks and balances? And you'd be exactly right. And that's precisely why there are 3 branches of government and not just 2. Because the checking of any one branch of government in the exercise of its core and plenary power is not supposed to be at the sole discretion of any other single branch of government. Checking any one branch of government in the exercise of its core and plenary power is supposed to require the intervention of both of the other 2 branches of government. That is our founders' pragmatic political solution for an overreaching branch of government.
One branch cannot trump the other. There has to be 2 branches going, simultaneously going after. There's checks and balances. Is there to keep out corruption like the BS that we have right now? Like I said, Obama did not let, stupid courts weigh in. Other presidents did not. They just kept on going. They said, F you. I'm the president. Listen, I can keep saying there's stuff that I do not like about Trump. I'm going this in a constitutional, lawful way. I'm going by law. I'm not going to go by stupid opinions. I'm putting out the facts. That's my job.
That the other two branches would join together to check it. For example, imagine that the Supreme Court, notice I am not saying an inferior court, the Supreme Court, concludes that the president is acting in some demonstrably unconstitutional way. They issue an order to the president to stop doing that. Now what?
Right.
Well, in a properly functioning constitutional America, the Congress would join with the Supreme Court by impeaching that president and voting him out of office, as could theoretically be done today if Trump were generally exceeding his authority as president of the executive branch within the constitutional power and duty to administer the government of the United States. What should be happening right now, today, is that the executive branch and the legislative branch of government should join forces to check the unlawful and tyrannical orders of these unelected, imperious, black-robed meddlers in an independent branch of government. And that's why I have a two-step plan for defeating judicial tyranny. One is the actions of the president, the executive branch, and the other is the actions of Congress. Step one, the executive branch correctly declares the orders of these inferior trial court judges an unconstitutional overreach and ignores them. Step two, the legislative branch both backs President Trump and holds these inferior court judges accountable for their unconstitutional overreach.
This is the thing I have issue with Pam Bondi and Congress not doing anything about. I'll tell you the real reason why Congress does not want to get involved too much. Because there are Republicans that are criminals too. They have their own programs. Like I said, both sides do this. They go after Democrats, they also have to take a look at themselves, the Republicans. Because they've overreached. They've done criminal activity they ain't supposed to do either. This is why. Pam Bondi, and there's a law down here, so I have to look at it, saying that, no branch, no sole branch, can impede or get in the way of presidential, orders, stuff like that. But I didn't get to that.
Congress could today back President Trump and simply pass a law affirming Trump's authority as president and rejecting the power of the inferior court trial judges to constrain the core authority of the executive branch consistent with constitutional powers and limitations. For example, Congress could pass a law that says the actions taken by the president that are core to his duties are legally presumed to be lawful, unless the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court alone, rules the conduct unconstitutional. This would certainly protect the executive branch from the volley of TROs currently being hurled by tyrannical inferior court judges to stymie the political will of the American people. Of course, such a law ought not actually be required, because any proper understanding of the Constitution itself already does this. But it would strip the inferior courts of the many federal statute pretexts they are using to issue lawless orders to the president. Congress should further seek to impeach and otherwise remove from the bench any inferior court judge who issues orders exceeding their authority. And under our constitutional order, these inferior court judges have no authority to interfere with the core and plenary powers of the executive branch. On similar grounds, Congress should remove from the bench each and every one of these tyrannical inferior court judges issuing orders exceeding their authority for having failed to abide by the Article 3, Section 1 conditions for employment as a federal judge, that they hold their offices during good behavior. I've already addressed this good behavior strategy for defending our Constitution in an earlier video. You may have seen that, but if you haven't, you can find it by clicking right here. Remember, it should hardly need to be said, but it appears it must. Not every order issued by a federal judge is necessarily a lawful order, and there is no legal or moral obligation to obey an unlawful order. If a federal judge summarily ordered you to burn down your home with your family inside, nobody would for a moment consider that a lawful order of that judge that they were legally or morally obliged to obey. We're not simply idiotic robots whom imperious judges get to order around on their whim. Judges, like all government officials in our constitutional order, have only limited authority. And the most quintessential limit to the scope of authority of any government official is the lack of authority to meddle in the core and plenary powers of an independent branch of government, which is precisely what these unelected, black-robed, tyrannical, inferior court trial judges are doing when they issue their imperious orders to the elected president of the executive branch of government.
Yep.
Another thought. Given the metastatic nature of the federal bureaucracy, the swamp, it also bears looking into whether any of these overreaching judges are issuing their orders in violation of the Code of Conduct for United States judges, which mandates that, quote, a judge must avoid all impropriety and appearance of impropriety, and a judge should perform the duties of the office impartially, close quote. One obvious form of violating these codes of conduct would be ruling on matters in which the outcome affects the judge's personal financial circumstances. And it turns out that more than a few of these judges have wives or adult children who are employed and receive financial compensation from various tentacles of the federal bureaucracy that President Trump is aggressively attempting to rein in.
Funny tentacles going on.
So President Trump's efforts are having a negative impact on these wives and adult children, and no reasonable person could expect a judge to remain impartial while his wife or adult kids were losing their jobs as a result of President Trump's policies. Yet these are precisely Trump's policies that these overreaching judges are ordering stopped. As just one example, consider Judge John Bates, who just issued a temporary restraining order against Trump policies this week. Judge Bates' wife, Carol Reese, is on the board of directors of the charity Hope for Children, which has for many years received funding from USAID, a government agency that Trump has just ordered dismantled and defunded. Keep in mind that Judge Bates could have simply recused himself from this matter and let a non-conflicted judge rule on the request for a TRO against Trump. But instead of doing that, Judge Bates chose to issue a temporary restraining order infringing on the core and plenary authorities of the President Trump executive branch, even as President Trump's policies were threatening to have a negative impact on Judge Bates' own household finances. This obviously creates, at a minimum, a reasonable appearance of conflict of interest, an appearance of impropriety, a substantive doubt about the judge's ability to rule impartially, and therefore an explicit violation of the Code of Conduct for United States judges. Clear grounds for removal from the bench for failing to hold their office under good behavior as the Constitution requires. How many other of these overreaching judges have spouses or adult children who work and are financially rewarded by various governmental and non-governmental agencies that will be negatively impacted by President Trump's policies? Worth asking. The bottom line is this: President Trump, any president, is fully within his authority as the head of the executive branch to simply ignore the lawless orders of these judges, and indeed is constitutionally mandated to ignore such lawless orders. And Congress is fully within its authority as the head of the legislative branch and the creators of the inferior courts to clarify Trump's plenary power and then impeach these judges for the misdemeanor of issuing orders beyond their authority, or alternatively remove them for having failed to hold their offices during good behavior, all as allowed and required by the U.S. Constitution. Americans are under no obligation to live under the tyrannical rule of unelected judges who are patently exceeding their legal authority and issuing orders to their superiors in an independent branch of government. Meanwhile, these tyrannical judges issuing these lawless orders can, for now, sit in their chambers and contemplate the actual limits of their power and authority under our beautiful, fantastic, amazing constitutional structure. Now, having said that Trump has the legal authority and duty to refuse to obey lawless, overreaching orders from these inferior trial court judges, is Trump right now seeking to exercise this legal authority in defense of the constitutional sanctity of the Article 2 executive branch? The answer is no, for now. Yesterday in a press conference, President Trump indicated that he's inclined to patience in the hopes that the appellate courts of the judicial branch, also inferior courts under the Constitution, that the appellate courts will be the adults in the judicial room and check the tyrannical trial.
This is a problem with Trump not doing what he's supposed to. And he should have ignored those stupid ass judges. Because they are criminals, what they're doing. And with this, he's letting them get away with these crimes and circumventing all constitutional law and powers. And they get to erase their crimes during this time, cover things up as well. So,
trial court underlings.
If a judge does block one of your policies, part of your agenda, will you abide by that ruling? Will you comply?
He doesn't have to.
Then I'll have to appeal it. But then what he's done is he slowed down the momentum. And it gives crooked people
these
more time
dumbass reporters, these idiots in media, do not know anything about the Constitution. And they're making it look like he has to abide. He does not have to do anything. Even Obama has said himself, I'm not going to let any, stupid judge, not going to let any judge tell me what I can and cannot do with these. That's on Twitter X. I invite people to look at that.
cover up the books. If a person's crooked and they get caught, other people see that, and all of a sudden it becomes harder later on. So, the answer is I always abide by the courts, always abide by them, and will appeal.
In this case,
but appeals take a long time, and I would hope that a judge, if you go into a judge and you show him, here's a corrupt situation, we have a check to be sent, but we found it to be corrupt. Do you want us to send this corrupt check to a person, or do you want us not to give it and give it back to the taxpayer? I would hope a judge would say, don't send it, give it back to the taxpayer.
So Trump says explicitly he's going to defer to these overreaching temporary restraining orders, halting his policies, and hope that the appellate courts will do the right thing, the constitutionally right thing.
And keep in mind, the appellate courts are politically skewed too. You can say anything about the Supreme Court as well. And how, judges on these courts. And this is why no judge should be on a bench that's on a political side. And stuff religious and stuff like that. You just don't, you shouldn't really be there. It's supposed to go with the Constitution. And so many times, like with the eminent domain, how they threw our rights away for we don't even own our own homes. We own nothing, really. That's a figment of people's imagination.
Thing. Although he notes that requiring these appeals has a substantial cost in both time and treasure. I'll also note in passing, after we just watched Trump say he would obey these overreaching court orders and appeal them in the usual course of litigation rather than ignore them, that the liars at CNN put to Chiron, Trump defends comments blasting federal judges on the bottom of the screen. However much you thought you hated the mainstream media, it's never enough. It never will be enough. But adequately hating the media, I'm afraid, is a topic for another day. Just as Trump is currently deferring to the courts, I too will currently defer to President Trump's judgment on this matter. But time runs out, Mr. President. The clock ticks fast. These orders from these overreaching judges are infringing your authority and are burning time. And maybe the biggest act of political arson we've seen in our lifetime. If the appellate courts stop this trial judge tyranny in short order, fine. But if they don't, President Trump, I remind you that we elected you for a reason. And the reason wasn't to maintain the status quo. You have the legal authority and duty to disobey lawless orders. Should the time come, use it.
It pisses me off.
For now, I'll close out by reminding all of you that if you carry a gun so you're hard to kill, that's why I carry a gun, so I'm hard to kill, so my family is hard to kill, then you also owe it to yourself and your family to know the law.
I carry rocket launchers, rocket-propelled grenades, always with me, because guns, they're not always going to do it. So I have missile launchers, I got, missile MLRSs, I bring with me, I drive them around. So if people try to harass me, I just show them what I got in my back, and they pretty much just let me go. Just thought. Anyways, moving on. Let's see here. There's a whole list. I want to go over the Second Amendment now. Wait, no. There is this one here. Where is that? That one. Is this it? Where is that law? Yeah, they should be charged and put in jail. Where is that? Because I know I was talking on some of this as well. I'll have to cast for misconduct. Let's see. Yeah, why aren't they? Because there's corruption in the committee as well. Because people talk about their own corruption. This is something that's total BS, though. Last Speaker Johnson said the Judiciary Committee spoken up. That's totally criminal negligence on the Republicans' part. And I also said in these chats that the Republicans also, they be open to their own stuff that they've done. Let me see here. I want to find that. Oh, Jesus Christ, where is that? There's already been a case in the 1890s where they ruled on this, where you cannot obstruct the President of the United States on his presidential orders. The President has the authority to do this. Just like every other president has done this before. I've already done this. Where is it? Yeah, that's this is what these people are doing. What they've been doing. Option 3, intentionally overload the courts with verdicts to impair executive branch by flooding them with executive orders until an aggregate of cases is achieved by the Supreme Court of the United States. That's their plan. To judge all cases under a single verdict. And I think that could be one thing. Honestly, number 3, I could see Trump and them thinking, let's get everybody to appeal this together, put them one lump together, go to Supreme Court or appellate appeals, and say, hey, you can't do this. This is against the Constitution. I can see that happen. I can see that this is a reason why. However, that judges have not already dismissed this and have not had anybody in Congress or the judicial body, it pisses me off that they are doing their job saying this is illegal. This is overstretching of the judicial branch by stupid judges, fleshbacks in black robes. pretending to play God. They're also, what they're doing is criminal and it's corrupt. I'm trying to find out, but it's 1890 something. It's like 96. Jesus Christ, where is it? I'd have to go back through my list. I have to go through. But they already ruled on this, is the thing. And I want to get to.
Trump has just released an executive order entitled Protecting Second Amendment Rights. This is unquestionably good news for gun owners, but the real question is, how good? The response has been just about what we would expect from the pro-gun and...
I mean, the thing with the audit, though, you raised a good point about having audit, take their money and stuff like that. The thing is, as I've been saying in here, is that they have overreached, these judges have overreached the constitutional powers and saying, hey, we can, interject, we can veto what he's doing. It's unconstitutional, which is every president does this. Obama himself on X and Twitter, I invite everybody to look at it, where each president, they're not going to let any judge, they don't let any judge dictate their presidential orders. Now, if they do, we're going into this right here about what Trump cannot do. Because that's my job. There are things that he can and he cannot do. Presidents cannot do under the Constitution. And there's different branches that keep the president, that keeps the justices, judges in line from gaining too much power. Each president has the authority to make these decisions. If they're unconstitutional, that's where the Supreme Court comes in. These judges, though, what they're doing is criminal. When their wives or daughters are making money off of USAID. There's corruption and criminal activity going on with these things. And that is where they're using politics or social agenda programs, or it's going to other countries. Other countries where it should go for programs that have nothing to do with the American people, American citizens. Why aren't we getting this? Why is it going to only political or special type of programs that should be going to everybody, not just one specific group? When you have a judge that's making these orders and there's corruption involved, they should be disbarred. And like I said, I'm not on any political side. I'm not. I am on the side, though, of where illegal immigration needs to be stopped. People need to be vetted and have their backgrounds done. Stuff like that. There's stuff I do agree with Trump on, and there's stuff that I don't. There's stuff that I fought against Republicans on. I'm not a tool for either side. I'm not a weapon for any side. I'm going over the constitutionality, the laws that are already there in place. And if this was happening to a Democratic president, I would be saying the same. It's affecting the people. I would say Obama himself said, I'm not going to have judges tell me what I can and cannot do. Because Obama was exercising his authority. It's a big problem where both sides are totally out of line and not representing the people anymore. both sides are so politically polarized nowadays, where they feel like they have to go nuclear against the other side. This is a problem with our country that we have today. And it's destroy our country. Both sides doing this. Not just one side, but both sides. And if I look at Europe, it's different sides. If I look at different countries around, which I do look at, that's a different ball of wax. But we're going to get into what Trump cannot do as well. I invite you to also go back and look at, the Constitution. There are people looking at audit and to take away money or whatever. I'm for that as well. But this is very criminal. Very criminal. What's going on. These judges would have more credence if they didn't have their wives, daughters, or family making money off of these programs that shouldn't even, a lot of them shouldn't even be there. Now, there are some U.S. aid that's helped some people. What I'm saying is create other programs that don't have bias in them for any sociological, religious, or political side, but helps all people that are American citizens. This is supposed to be for American citizens, not be going illegals, stuff like that, or other countries. It's supposed to help the people here. Now, this is the thing where all this money is going to other countries. And I believe in Israel, I believe in Ukraine and stuff like that, but there are other countries that have been getting money that hate us, that have been getting money in Africa, that hate us or want genocide against white people. I'm multi-race, by the way. But the thing is, you talk about South Africa there and stuff like that, where they have whole stadiums where they want to genocide white people, and they're getting aid. There's a fucking problem with that. And I invite people to look at these other countries, who's getting this money, and keep in mind, you have Ukraine, and you have all these other countries, Haiti, and other countries saying, we only got 5% of what they said they were going to give us. 5%. What criminal activity is going on? Where is all this money going cash flowed into? And then you also look where different states and other money has been funneled to illegals to give them free housing, free rent, EBT, Social Security. They get driver's license for free. They don't even have to have one if they're illegal in some states. They don't even have to have that. If they got into a car crash, the police let them go. I saw it live on camera. I see it live and stuff like that. And it's disturbing where our money is really going. And if it's not going to other countries, as said, either, there's something wrong. This is why we have DOGE, D-O-G-E. Is because no matter what side, what political side you're on, the people have a right to know where our money is going. Everybody needs to be accountable. If there's criminal activity being involved, which there is, people need to be put in prison for hurting us and lying to American people. Our money is going into these programs. Our money. And this is a big problem.
Anti-gun factions, with the pro-gun folks being perhaps a bit too exuberant and the anti-gun crowd screwing up their sour-faced Karen expressions in frustration. The order itself is very dry, bureaucrat, boilerplate government speak without specific details on what gun owners can expect to change in coming months. That's okay, because all of you have me to help you set realistic expectations, both positive and negative. I am, of course, Attorney Andrew Branca for Law of Self-Defense. Hey folks, I want to take just a moment to invite you all to our upcoming live and 100% free Law of Self-Defense Hard to Convict webinar. This free webinar teaches you how to be hard to convict if you're ever compelled to use force in defense of yourself, your family, or your property. The webinar is live streamed by me personally, and there's plenty of opportunity for Q&A. Best of all, it's 100% free, but we do limit seats to allow for adequate Q&A. So I urge you to grab your seat right now by signing up at lawofselfdefense.com/hard to convict. Members of the Second Amendment community have received Trump's executive order on the Second Amendment with a degree of understandable exuberance. Often we in the gun community feel starved for Second Amendment favorable news, and this executive order is certainly that. But the enthusiasm may also be unrealistic. This YouTube channel, for example, Legally Armed America, ran with the headline, Trump issues executive order restoring the Second Amendment at all levels of government. Now, nobody would be happier than me if that were true, but I'm afraid it's not, because it simply can't be. Trump, even as president, lacks the constitutional authority to do that. By the way, I'm not picking on Legally Armed America in particular. He produces great content. Go check out his channel. Meanwhile, over on X, I'm seeing a lot of posts along these lines. President Trump issues an executive order ensuring no infringement on Americans' rights to protect themselves and their freedoms. Again, nobody would be happier than me if this were true, but it's not. It can't be. Meanwhile, of course, the gun control organizations are against.
This is where the legislative and the judicial branches both have to come together. When there is something like this happening, what has to happen, like I said, under Constitution, is that Congress would have to make an amendment to say that your local municipalities, your local laws are now null and void. Because this would be a national thing. The president cannot do that. Congress, only Congress can make laws to do that. Otherwise, the Supreme Court is going to come down and say, hey, President, you can't do this. Now, I think Second Amendment is a must, especially when you have politicians that are wanting to make dictatorship happen. This is a big reason why I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment, and for people that just want to be out in the wild, hunt for food, stuff like that, that'd be me. And people's self-defense. Dictatorship, hunting, self-defense. This is the reason why I'm very pro-Second Amendment. With both sides, always trying to take rights away one way or another. They'd have to enact an amendment, but that make it add to the Constitution. Like I said, the Supreme Court could say, hey, you're going too far. They haven't yet, but I think we'll just give some time.
That there might be even a slight decrease in infringement on the Second Amendment. Writing on X, here's Everytown for Gun Safety, quote, he wants open carry, no background checks, no insurance, no instructions. That isn't what the Second Amendment was for. Well, I'm pretty sure all of this is exactly what the Second Amendment is for. Not to have any of that. As an aside, I wonder how Everytown is...
Now, there are different sides. I gotta say this, because there's different sides, of course. The Second Amendment, back then, there weren't as many people creating crimes as well. So they didn't have, all these background checks or whatever. Now, they did have it where you're not allowed to have a gun back in the 1800s and stuff like that. You were allowed to have that. And we didn't have technology back then to have background checks. We didn't have enough police and stuff like that. You're talking about there being one policeman every 25 miles sometimes. So it's not like, you know, they could do checks and all this other stuff while there's counter wrestling and other stuff going on. So I mean, he has that part, and lost my train of thought a little bit. But yeah, we need background checks today. We do. We need them today. It's very important. Very, very important that we have them.
It's going to be doing moving forward. Now that USAID has been shut down, is every town going to start bouncing checks now that its secret CIA funding is going away? Let's hope so. I must say that I did come across one YouTube video on this executive order that really did a pretty good job diving into the micro details of the order. I'll provide a link to that in the description for those who are interested. It's a good channel, does a lot of great gun content. My mission here, however, is to take more of a macro view on what we can expect from Trump's Second Amendment executive order and why. In a nutshell, the order instructs the Department of Justice to take the next 30 days to review all gun-related orders, regulations, policies, and so forth within the executive branch and identify any that improperly infringe on the Second Amendment, and then to present a plan to correct any such infringements. Then the plan will be reviewed with Trump's domestic policy advisor. Really, that's Trump's own review of the DOJ plan and any modifications he might want to make. And then the final version of that plan will be implemented.
Again, this is what every president does, so no matter what side of the aisle. They have their, you know, reasoning for doing what they want to each amendment, whether it's freedom of speech, religion, or guns. This is always going to happen.
Implemented. If our goal is to have reasonable expectations about the scope of Trump's executive order and the resulting plan, then we need to understand that gun law, gun control law, has 3 different legal silos. And importantly, Trump's authority only reaches one of those. The legal silo of greatest authority is, of course, the Second Amendment, which reads, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. As well as, of course, Supreme Court jurisprudence, further defining the Second Amendment, particularly the most recent Bruen decision. In Bruen, the Supreme Court held that Americans have a presumptive right to keep and bear arms for lawful purposes, particularly self-defense, and that the burden is on the government to prove gun control laws don't unconstitutionally infringe that right. In order to prove this, the government must show some tradition or historically comparable gun control law from the period in which the Second Amendment was ratified, meaning 1791. In other words, if the founders accepted...
This is important because a lot of people think that all this was done in 1776. No, it was done years later after 1776. 1775, you look at the Constitution, everybody needs to study. I need to do more as well because I was going to do law and everything. It's just, there's so much other things going on. And when I can't hear all the time and I get sick, I can't be at college, I wasn't getting the accommodations that I needed. I also got ignored and stuff, so it's like, I'm doing this, but I want everything. I want to know everything. But
a restriction, then it's okay. Otherwise, the law being proposed is an unconstitutional infringement. The problem for gun controllers, of course, is there existed virtually no gun control laws from that period. Certainly no permitting requirements, no laws on how guns must be stored, no laws on how long a rifle barrel can be, or how many rounds a firearm can be.
This is a misconception, and there's a lot of misinformation, whatever, is that there were some guns back then. They weren't magazines, all right? But you did have multi-bulletin, different rounds. I'm not talking about 6-shooters. I'm not talking about those. But there were some specially made guns that are almost like magazines that could shoot more than 3 at a time. I'm not talking about the repeaters either. But there were there's some crazy guns that were made in the 1800s and before, before then. Everything. There always is. But they never had laws against that.
Loaded with. So by the standard of Bruen, virtually every modern era gun control law is unconstitutional. That brings us to the second legal silo of gun control laws, statutes passed by Congress. I'm talking here about the National Firearms Act of 1934, the Gun Control Act of 1968, the Firearms Owners Protection Act of 1986, the Brady Act when that was in effect, and so forth. Now, in a just world, all those gun control statutes would already have been found unconstitutional and void under Bruen, but we're just not there yet. So those gun control statutes remain on the books and enforced, even as they are being challenged and gradually whittled down by Second Amendment advocates. But it must be said, with far too little assistance from the same Supreme Court that wrote Bruen only a couple of years ago. And finally, we have the third legal silo of gun control laws. These are executive branch procedures, practices, regulations, and rulings, which are really just bureaucratic opinions, and often whimsical and poorly reasoned opinions at that. So now we're at the good news, bad news part of understanding Trump's Second Amendment executive order. Let's do the bad news first. The bad news is that Trump's executive order has no impact on the first two legal silos of gun control laws, meaning Supreme Court jurisprudence and gun control statutes like the NFA and GCA. It means that Trump's executive order cannot, for example, remove the tax stamp requirement for machine guns or suppressors. It means that Trump's executive order cannot eliminate the requirement that a gun be purchased from your state's federal firearms licensee.
That requires an act of Congress.
We're not going back to the days of just being able to buy a shotgun with no paperwork at the local hardware store, like I have personally done in younger years. It means that Trump's executive order cannot do away with the requirement that even when
I had a gun, I accidentally shot myself. Let's move on and I'll talk about
machine
this.
gun can be lawfully purchased and must have been manufactured before 1986, now almost 40 years ago. That's a hard limit on what our reasonable expectations can be for Trump's Second Amendment executive order. It touches not a hair on any of that. But there's also good news. Trump's executive order can run roughshod over the third legal silo of government procedures, practices, regulations, and agency opinions. And that is huge, because that third silo is wielded on a massive scale by gun control advocates and Second Amendment hostile governmental actors to harass, prosecute, imprison, and sometimes even kill our brothers and sisters in the gun community. Let me give a few examples. Within the second silo, the gun statutes that say you need special paperwork and a tax stamp to possess a machine gun or a suppressor or a short-barreled rifle. And if you don't have that, it's a 10-year felony sentence and a $250,000 fine. Okay, I'd call that an unconstitutional infringement of the Second Amendment.
It is.
But,
it is.
However I feel about it, I can avoid tripping over that unconstitutional law simply by not possessing a machine gun or a suppressor or a short-barreled rifle, right? Well, I'm afraid not. As old Bill Clinton might say, it all depends on what the meaning of machine gun is.
Oh, Bill Clinton.
A fully assembled and operable firearm designed to fire and capable of firing more than one bullet with a single press of a trigger would constitute what any reasonable person would call a machine gun. But what if there's a single part within that firearm that makes this capability possible? Let's call that part an auto sear. And without that part, only a single round fires with each press of the trigger. Now you no longer have a machine gun. But I'm afraid you do. Because even if the firearm itself is no longer technically a machine gun, that auto sear you're holding in your hand that you just took out of that weapon, that single inert metal part, the ATF calls that a machine gun. Possession of that
this is the thing with the ATF I don't like about the ATF. They're anti-constitution. Our forefathers were pro-guns. They're pro-tobacco. And they're pro-alcohol. They made their own alcohol. I like what the ATF is doing about getting about the illegals, but they're anti-constitution in everything that we do. You're talking about, them, going after people that make their own alcohol and stuff like that. It's just, they're totally anti-constitution in every way.
Metal part without the required paperwork and tax stamp is good for 10 years in prison. Much the same is true for a suppressor.
That's a long time.
Certainly a fully assembled and operable suppressor that reduces the audio signature of a fired shot would fall within the scope of the NFA, as unconstitutional as the NFA is.
National Firearms Act.
Well, some suppressors work by having rubber washers in them as replaceable parts. Guess what? If you possess one of those rubber washers, even without the other components necessary to assemble a functional suppressor, the ATF says you are in possession of a suppressor. Again, good for 10 years if you don't have the paperwork and tax stamp. Again, the same with short-barreled rifles. It's possible to have a firearm that visually resembles a short-barreled rifle, but technically qualifies as a pistol. The pistol needs no special paperwork and no tax stamp. But then if you add a small vertical brace onto the underside of the barrel, your legal pistol has suddenly become an illegal short-barreled rifle, again good for 10 years in prison. And you can add in your own examples for arm braces, for 80% firearms, for destructive devices, all of that. All of these examples are serious felony crimes, not based on any constitutional law, not on any Supreme Court jurisprudence, not really on any gun control statute. They're based entirely on these very broad definitions promulgated by the ATF. And the ATF is entirely within the purview of Trump's authority as president, as head of the Article 2 executive branch of the government. And therefore,
it's not, I don't want this to be about President Trump. Because I don't like that political thing, you're MAGA or this, I'm not. It's about everybody's rights. It's about everybody's right to bear arms and stuff like that, not just about whatever you want and everything. And I've seen in countries where they've done away with firearms, the UK, Europe, Canada, and these places have come almost like dictatorships, like the UK. Some parts of Europe. There's Australia. And the corruption of government. They do that and they take everybody's rights away with guns. Guns is there to circumvent dictatorship. That's what guns and having weapons is for. The people are supposed to be a deterrent. The government should always feel threatened by the people. So we keep them in line. We have to do this. With the stuff that I do, I want people to know truth on different things. I want to call government out of corruption as well. And the people should be in charge. And the problem is that the people are always asking the government and other people to step in when most of the stuff people could do themselves. Or they say that the government, that the guns are at fault for this happening. The guns cannot go walk by themselves and shoot somebody. This is somebody that's mentally fucked up, mentally messed up. And there are laws that are not being enforced when mass shootings happen. There's laws in place, good laws that are there. They're not being enforced. We see this all the time, that they already had laws. And the other side is always going to say we need more laws. No, it isn't that. People are mentally sick. People can hold these guns. It's what they're taking that can cause suicidal, homicidal thoughts. I know I've been on these things before. I used to be on these things. And it says on the bottle, at least it used to, that these things can cause suicidal, homicidal thoughts. And we see so many shootings with these people on these antipsychotics, when they are psychotics. And there's a huge thing we need to talk about mental health and everything. Big discussion with that. And people see things a lot differently if they saw the bottles, these prescriptions, saying may cause suicidal, homicidal thoughts. That's scary shit. My mother and father, I was on some of these drugs because I believed in UFOs and stuff like that. You know, me and the family, sometimes see angels, demons, or whatever going through the house. It wasn't just me, but it affected me different. And so they have all these medications, which I don't take anymore. My parents saw, well, these bottles could cause these homicidal, suicidal threats too. It's like
4 of his executive orders. So one reasonable expectation for this latest executive order Trump signed is that all those definitions could just change, making those serious felonies just go away. Possession of an autoseer or a suppressor baffle or an installed vertical grip on an otherwise lawful pistol would no longer be defined as felonies. The same for arm braces, 80% firearms, and so forth. To generalize this, where the ATF has discretion, it will be ordered to apply that discretion in a manner favorable to the firearms owner, rather than to prosecution, as has been the case for essentially all of the ATF's existence. This discretion would also apply to the Department of Justice generally, where we will reduce or stop defending gun control laws in court on the one hand, and will stop contesting appellate court rulings favorable to the Second Amendment on the other. In other words, going forward, the DOJ will spend little or no time constraining our Second Amendment rights in the courtroom. Importantly, this executive order change also applies to the ATF policies, not just definitions, but their actual procedures. For example, in years past, it was standing practice that if the ATF was reviewing the books of a federal firearms licensee and they found a clerical error consistent with simple human imperfection, say 2 numbers and an address were transposed, the ATF might provide some counseling to encourage that FFL to be more careful in the future. Under the Biden administration, however, the procedure is different. Even the slightest of clerical errors was used to completely strip that FFL of his license, putting him out of business. In some cases, the ATF would swamp every FFL in a large region, putting substantial numbers of them out of business, effectively creating a gun store desert and making it wildly inconvenient for local law-abiding citizens to exercise their Second Amendment rights. This is analogous to some government agency going around closing churches in a community because of clerical errors, effectively making it unlawful for the people in that community to worship. Even worse has been the ATF practice of operating as a paramilitary organization, complete with heavy armored vehicles and more. Once any agency is given this type of military-like resource, they inevitably use it, however unnecessarily, and with completely avoidable tragic results.
Yep.
Last March, for example, the ATF decided that the manager of a regional airport in Arkansas had violated one of their gun laws, and they went out to make his arrest. Let's pretend the arrest was appropriate for purposes of this discussion. Did the ATF send a couple of agents out to the airport where the manager worked within the secure area, and necessarily he'd be unarmed, and simply cuff him up, make the arrest? No. The ATF sent a heavily armed squad of agents to his home in the dark hours of the night. And as part of their operation, they cut off the power to his house. The airport manager, having no reason to believe...
I hate where people have just think that this is okay. And if they have these things, I think we should as well, to circumvent, that. I don't like that. Where, law enforcement and ATF that's anti-constitution, and elements of law enforcement that's anti-constitution have militarized and have all these armored vehicles they shouldn't have, and militarized it. And I feel the people should have those things as well to circumvent them if needed. Because law enforcement does not believe in people's constitutional rights. They want to have all that stuff for themselves, and they are willing to have a dictatorship. I've been around lots of police cops before, and they said, "Hey, you're fine as long as you do as we tell you." Yeah. Anyways, let's get. I want to get to. Let's see.
Breaking news, everyone. JLR investigates. Come on in. Migrant Madness. That is the title of this video. ICE raid.
This is JLR, and I told them I was going to make my own video about this stuff because I want to go over the legal stuff, the constitutionality, all these things, and the laws that politicians are breaking as well. Though there is natural immunity that law enforcement, politicians, and judges have. They should have it, and how they get away with the crimes that they commit on us. They have what's called legally, natural immunity that me and you do not have. And so I was putting this in chat. I was getting pissed off because nobody's listening. Though what I said was legally true. Yeah, I think people need to wake the F up with that.
It's mass deportations. Tom Holman and A.
They shouldn't have natural immunity. They shouldn't have any. But it's how they get away with lying about other politicians, making up fictitious stories, and say that the other person is a criminal when they have done any criminal behavior.
AOC going.
They get away with
There's
that.
beef between Tom Holman and AOC. Well, big beef. They're going back and at it, back and forth on Twitter and all over the media networks. We're talking about the border migrant crisis, a topic that we've covered extensively on JLR Investigates, and we continue to cover to see what in the world is going on. New reports out, folks.
Yes.
Of one of the lowest crossings, amount of people that crossed over the United States illegally in the last 24 hours, one of the lowest reporting crossings in over 40 years. In the course of the last 24 hours, they're saying that only like 200 to 229, something like that, 200 and something or so individuals crossed over the southern border illegally, through the whole entire southern border, from Brownsville, Texas, all the way to Tijuana, on top of the northern border, Swanton sector, all over Maine, that area. About 200, we'll say 250. There's actually a real number. The number actually says 200. Where's that number? It's 200. It's not a lot. Yeah, it's one of the old-time lows. 229. 229 people have crossed over the southern border or the northern border illegally in 24 hours. That's a low, considering last year, the end of last year, at the peak, we're talking about 15,000. 15,000 would cross over every single day for a good month. They were receiving crazy numbers. So we're at an all.
And they're taking all of our money away from us, the people, the American citizens. They're getting stuff for free. They're getting free housing, free health care, EBT, all this stuff, and free housing. And we're getting shit on. It pisses me off. Our people. And the thing is, I don't like to be hateful or sound hateful, but let me tell you, I don't have any respect for any type of people that think they deserve everything for free when they don't work for it, and they cause trouble in this country, and they expect to keep getting everything for free.
Time low.
At our cost.
Now, why is that? Why is that? Well, I think there's numerous reasons why. One, the border is seems like it is secure. It seems like they're putting up additional wire in Texas, buoys, National Guard all over Texas's border. Seems like they're starting up the wall again. It seems like some of the National Guard is being called down to the border along with the military. It seems like the cartel is getting scared away because the Trump administration declared a war on the cartels. And it seems like the Mexican government is also ramping up their security on the border, along with the Canadian border. And then we talk about the NGOs. The NGOs that have been profiting a lot in the last 4 years. Well, they're all being shut down. They're all getting defunded. They're all crippling before our eyes, which is a good thing in my mind, because what I've seen Catholic Charities and Jewish Family Services do in the last 4 years is almost treasonous in my mind. Facilitating and assisting and enabling and helping people.
It is, because the cartels are a terrorist organization. So legally, this bitch can't be arrested. She should be arrested, and so should these other politicians. It's totally treasonous. Because there are people from the cartels, and I know people, from being in jail and stuff like that. I know who comes across this border. I know from other people, from not being in jail, who crosses the border. Cartel. Gangs. So they're harboring criminals and everything. They're harboring the enemy of the state, of the country. So yes, they can. I know what I'm talking about.
People cross over the border illegally, human trafficking, human smuggling, sex trafficking, child trafficking, all the types of trafficking that these NGOs participated with, on top of
300,000, 500,000 children are missing. Part of the cartels that's funneling them in other gangs or whatever, funneling kids in, there's sex trafficking with that. 300,000, 500,000 kids, unaccounted for, missing. Why doesn't the other side care about this? There's something wrong with this picture where they don't care about kids. They don't care about murders, rapes going on, and stuff like that. Not all illegals are bad. I want to put that disclaimer. I don't like to sound like some racist POS or something. I'm not. We need to have a legally vetting process. You have to do it like our ancestors did it. They got nothing for free. Our ancestors got nothing for free whatsoever. We got no handouts. And for my Native American or tribals, and not Native American, we're tribal, all right? We got nothing for free. Most of us got massacred and stuff like that. But we didn't get anything for free.
Receiving tens of millions of dollars. And the finances are out, folks. The finances are out of these NGOs. I mean, it's staggering the millions that they've received. Catholic Charities has so many denominations and Catholic Charities offices all over the place.
Jewish Charities.
Tens of millions of dollars. Jewish Family Services, Mission, Border Hope, that gigantic NGO right there in Eagle Pass that we've covered extensively. All these NGOs, they received so much money, but not anymore, folks. The NGOs have officially been defunded. And I don't think they're ever coming back. I do not think that these NGOs will ever participate in any of this stuff ever again. One, they don't have the money to do it. And two, I believe that most of them will be brought into Congress down the line and face investigations for their conduct of what they did. Look at AOC right here. Migrant madness. Because
how can it was so
and
beautiful
Tom
be
Homan,
such a slut?
Are going back and forth. Matter of fact, Tom Homan
is terrible.
Is shooting out some interesting stuff about AOC and accusing of AOC of harboring illegal immigrants, harboring, enabling, shielding, protecting them.
Yes.
Now, AOC claims she has a legal right to do that. Does she?
No, she doesn't.
Does she?
This is where natural immunity, like I said in this chat, and people weren't listening to me, but it's people in Congress, political office, law enforcement, etc. Lawyers, stuff like that. They have what's called natural immunity. That means you do not have the average citizen because they're in authority and stuff like that. They have special rules and special, things that they could do that me and you would be arrested, thrown in prison for, or sued for defamation with billions of dollars. They get away with murder.
Holman speaks about all of this. There's a lot of news media reports out in the last 24 hours. I'm pretty much giving you an idea of what is going on in the last 24 hours when it comes to the border migrant crisis.
NGOs, non-governmental organizations, I probably should have said that before, is not from the government. They're private organizations, pretty much run by political people of political, so-called religious denominations, sociological agendas, stuff like that. And they use taxpayer dollars, and they get tens of millions, hundreds of millions, or even billions of dollars over time, going to places that a lot of us would not approve of.
Right. ICE raids continue to happen. They're happening in Seattle. They're happening in sanctuary cities. Despite the sanctuary cities not complying with ICE, ICE is still managing to round up the criminals, the worst of the worst. The migrants that already, have deportation orders, or the migrants that, or illegals, whatever you want to call them. I'm fair and I say migrants. So I might not be saying
it's true, Magnolia.
Agree with they're not migrants, whatever. I just call them migrants. That's because I've been used to it. So these migrants either have deportation orders, or the migrants have already pending criminal charges of violence, or they've already have convictions of violence or violent crimes, and they're being rounded up. Those are the three sets of people.
I said, I believe I almost laughed, rolled on the floor, laughed my ass off, because the face, Ignacio Cortez's, all right? I was still in bed because I'm up late in the morning, and I see her face, and I laughed my ass off. I'm laughing my ass off at her face. Look at her face. It's like, where are you sticking it? Never mind. It did. I was laughing my ass off. If I was not in bed, I would have rolled on the floor laughing. I would have rolled on the floor. The bed had me saved. Amen. It had me saved. Amen.
That I see being rounded up across the country. There's some people, if you've been arrested for any violent crime in the last, long time, but if you have any pending charges, here's another tactic they're doing, by the way. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but if any of these migrants or illegals have pending charges, ICE is waiting for them at the courthouse. So when they arrive for their court hearing, they're getting swooped up. So they don't even have to get a conviction. They're swooping people up. They're using that as an opportunity. And those are the type of people that President Trump said would be deported. The mass deportation, the biggest mass deportation in United States history. And it is underway. Now, they're a little upset.
This is a problem, is that for law enforcement is keeping criminals out of the eyes of ICE, ATF, FBI, or whatever, is that they're harboring. And again, not all illegals are bad. I'm not going to be called a racist, POS, or anything like that. I have Latin girlfriends. And if they were ever illegal, I'd probably try to hide them myself. I got to put that out there. I would. If I got arrested, I would, because I love them. But holy shit, when you got them rapists, murderers, sex traffickers, robbers, gang members, cartel members, and law enforcement is not helping them. We need to have that legal vetted process that our ancestors had, where we had to prove that we could make our own way to this country. It vetted. And to have DNA testing of anybody with any kids so they can prove that those are their kids and not being sex trafficked. Can I get an amen for that? I should. I should be able to get a like just for that.
Incoming administration about the numbers, right? They say the numbers are not where they wanted to be. I'm hearing conflicting reports between 1,300 and 1,500 or 1,800. I've seen 1,800. And I also seen reports of 1,300 to 1,500. We're talking about per day. That's what they want. It's almost like a quota of how many people they want deported from these, ICE offices. There's numerous ICE offices scattered across the country, usually in right outside the sanctuary cities or in that zone area. So they want a certain number of migrants or illegals rounded up by ICE and arrested in each field office throughout the country. I'm hearing numbers like there's 25 specific ICE field offices that are out there doing the mass deportations, and out of that they want 75 per ICE office a day. That's a lot. But then they're also struggling with the fact that a lot of these migrants or illegals get tipped off. They're getting shielded. They're hiding. You got politicians like AOC that is encouraging them and telling them what to do and how to know their rights, not answer the door. And
it's very important that people know the Constitution. It only applies to citizens of the United States. Nobody has any constitutional rights that's not American. These are facts. You can argue it, have an opinion, say whatever the F you want, but no. You're here illegally, you have no constitutional rights. Those are people that have been born here and have naturalized themselves. Just say that.
And that sort of thing. So that's kind of like a battle between the government and these organizations. Now, one thing about the NGOs being defunded, folks, the NGOs being defunded would also help the Trump administration, because these NGOs, with all that money they received, the tens of millions, they probably were in the process of trying to shield or try to hide the people that they helped facilitate across the country, and they can't do that. They don't have the money or the staff anymore to do that. There's no more money for the NGOs to participate in this scandal, and I call this migrant scandal because it's the biggest scandal, I think, in United States history. What we witnessed and saw for the last few years, I can't even emphasize how awful and treasonous and criminal what we saw. I mean, it was groups taking advantage of clear open borders with no policies whatsoever to do anything about it, and just allow massive amount of people coming in. So many people, we don't know who they were, which resulted in American families.
They do need to learn Constitution. Pam Bondi is not doing as great a job as I feel. Yeah, she's not. She's not doing that great of a job. She's not. Or these politicians should be charged with criminal crimes, offenses, and stuff.
Being victimized, not only with murders like Rachel Moran, Jocelyn Nungaray, Lisbeth Modena. Those are some of the Laken Riley. Those are some of the cases. American families being victimized, murdered, family members murdered. But these migrants would be involved with all types of assaults, migrant burglary rings, organized crime, South American gangs, Tren de Aragua, sex trafficking, human trafficking, the smuggles of fentanyl being smuggled into the country, So it just keeps happening and happening and happening, and we don't know what the extent of the damage has been done. But what we do know at this point, it seems like, unless you have a open and blatant sanctuary city that says the criminals can stay, I see all these criminals hiding. I see them all hiding in the shadows, and they're now the hunters are being hunted now. They're being hunted. They're being hunted, and we're living in a whole different world. It's night and day from just 1 year ago. It's like the tale of two cities. I mean, we even have Gavin Newsom now that's vetoing bills that would protect, California had this legislation that they were trying to prohibit ICE from going into the jails and prisons in California, and they didn't want to cooperate with ICE. But Newsom, of all people, going to veto that bill. I don't know if he's actually vetoed that bill yet, but once it goes to his desk, he's vetoing it. So even Newsom is like, criminals, at the very least, the criminals and the gang members, the Tren de Aragua, the MS-13, and all the registered sex offender, migrants, all of them, they gotta go. They gotta go. They gotta get out of this country. They're poison. They're a poison in this country. They're doing so much economic harm and with crime. And what sucks is they've been getting away with it for so long because almost like sanctuary cities protect these criminals. Not only if they get caught, but they even give them light slaps on the wrist to avoid deportation by ICE by giving them county sentences.
And what these states, they don't report the crimes. They don't report their crime. So in these areas, say where crime's gone down, it's all bullshit. We talk about Chicago, we talk about Aurora, Colorado, other states, Georgia, all these other states where they're not reporting crimes. And the residents of Chicago are pissed about it. You got, Americans are suffering for this and being lied to by politicians. They're being paid from places like USAID or other, they already got kickbacks from Biden administration. They get kickbacks in other ways, money, making money off of illegals that they can't get off of American citizens.
Or slaps on the wrist or house arrest. And then all these criminals do is just move from community to community and start preying again. It was crazy. Crime, for politicians to say that crime was going down is ridiculous, because we've seen the violent crime in these cities go up. And not only that, but most of the rest are people that crossed into the United States illegally, a lot in these inner cities. So enough is enough. It's over. So, pretty much every criminal should be on notice now. If you commit a crime while you're here illegally, you're done. You're done. You're literally done. You're done. It's no more. You don't get no sanctuary. You don't get no protection. You don't get.
The thing is that I believe ICE has said they don't have enough money for, enough manpower and money for all that's needed. And to be honest, about 10,000 a week, 1,000 a day need to be rounded up for it to make a dent. And you have criminal politicians that are enabling this shit to happen.
Get no legal advice. You don't get no more, people protecting you. It's over. It's officially over. All those migrant camps that we've seen.
By the way, I'm only doing this using him on this much because he wants this to get out. I'm putting this as news, transformative as well as stuff that I know. Please give him a like, subscribe to him and everything else. He deserves the success he's gotten. And of course, there's stuff that we disagree on. There's certain things, but there's stuff that we do agree on as well. So,
on the southern border, all that stuff. I don't think we're ever going to see that in our lifetime ever again. I don't think anyone's ever going to. It's similar now. I'm gonna put this back to the COVID era in 2020, right? COVID era, whether you believed, in COVID or not, this chat here, there's a lot of mixed opinions about COVID, whatever, with the mandates, the vaccine mandates, the mask mandates, and everything like that. Some people wanted just optional. Other people didn't believe in the mandates. Some people said you need mandates to stop the spread. There's a lot of opinions. But what we do know with that COVID stuff, and I'll say even the COVID experiment from 2020, I don't think we're ever going back to that ever again. I don't think any Americans as a whole would ever even co-sign to anything when it comes to mandates or mandatory masks or vaccines or anything. I don't think that's ever going to happen again in this country. Just like I don't think the crossings that came through the southern border in the last four years, I don't think we're ever going to see that ever again in our lifetime. We're not. We're not going to see these migrant camps like in Sassabee, Arizona, or Coomba, California, or Eagle Pass, between the railroad line and the bridge. We're never going to see those people ever be put in pens and cages and processed and let out in America again. It's not never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. But when you have a population of 315 million Americans, 320 million Americans, we're getting close to 1/3 of a million people, or billion people, 1/3 of a billion people in the United States. You're talking about 10 million, 15 million people across in the United States illegally. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. And I'm saying this the way it was done and the way the cartel and the NGOs organized people through. I have no sympathy for anyone that used this loophole, use these ridiculous programs like TPS, CBP, One Apps, going through the southern border.
And the thing is, they shit on us Americans, where it's Americans last, illegals first. And you have these idiot, illegals coming in, thinking they deserve everything for free. They don't. They don't deserve anything for free. And that's the thing. We suffered, they're homeless, their people died on the streets of their own feces and stuff, fentanyl, drugs, you got cartels, gangs, and stuff like that, just being smuggled, funneled in, and that's the thing.
By paying to get driven to the southern border to cross over illegally through the unsecure wall, under the wall, over the wall, around the wall, across the Rio Grande. I have zero sympathy for any of them because you're committing a crime. You know that you're doing it wrong and you're cheating the whole process and you're undermining the whole process because there's a process. If you want to seek asylum, you go to the port of entry, you apply for asylum, and you wait your turn to be heard. And if you have a valid claim of persecution and you have a valid claim that whatever bad is happening to an individual from the country they're from, then they possibly could come in. And they do let people in this country that way. This country was based off immigration, but the legal way. So if you're cheating the system and coming across and want to live in the shadows and want to live off social services and you want to commit crimes in the United States and come in and be exploited, because every single one of those people that crossed through the United States illegally through the southern border the way they did in the last 4 years are being exploited right now. They're being taken advantage of, whether it's American employers hiring them at cheap labor where they don't report it, under the table.
This is also a thing. Construction work. I've done that. I love construction work. And you see that there's a lot of illegals, doing that as well. Going, to fields like that, and it's like someone like me, they don't want me in there. I don't speak Spanish. It's like they get their own people in there. Well, people like me, whatever, is not as much as welcome, but and stuff. So I mean, you're talking about lower wages, stuff like that. It's not everybody that this happens with, but it happens a lot. And they don't want to hire American citizens. They want, their own people to do it, or their own kind, or whatever. And that's not okay.
Or living off social services, either or. Now, I'm preaching a little bit this morning. You might agree, you might not agree. But I think every single person that crossed through the United States illegally in the last 4 years, it should be null and voided.
I think it should be 10. I said
now
10
again,
years.
I don't believe that people that have been in this country for a decade or a long time that actually is living, might be here illegally, but paying their taxes and getting a job and working and raising a family and staying out of trouble and don't get arrested and live in the American culture of life and really appreciate it here. I have no problem with those people. Some people do, some people don't. Because our country has enough problems as it is with poverty, homelessness.
I said,
veterans.
If they can make their own way and stuff like that, I don't have a problem with that. Whoever can, that's different. They need to be deported and stuff. So, people making their own way even today. I wouldn't be exactly for deported if they could make their own way. And if they didn't take our jobs. This thing, you got Tyson Chicken. You have these food processing plants that kicked Americans out of their jobs, like Tyson Foods and other food processing areas, or beverage processing plants kick Americans out because they want lower wage illegals to fill in that job where you don't have to pay as much, and they call it diversity. They put under diverse people.
That need mental health treatment, and these social services and people, pregnant mothers, fatherless, fatherless children, things like that. Americans that have problems and issues. But these social services over the last 4 years, particularly in the sanctuary cities, what these social services were intended for, Americans that need help. Temporary food stamps, someone that is struggling, someone that gets laid off, their job, works, can't work, or gets a disability, or needs some help from the state. The state will help them for a few months and give them that 29 all-time low. And they cross in the United States illegally. They claim there's somebody else's name. They get processed. They stay in this country, the court date. Then they work with other NGOs and different organizations and sympathizers all across the United States. And they keep obscuring their ID or changing their name or changing letters in their name and altering stuff. So even if they get arrested,
you got people, they're taking our people's social security numbers, their IDs, taking our people's names, dead people's names, stuff like that. And they keep on changing it to avoid being captured.
They get arrested, they post bond, and then they change their name again, and they're someone else, and then they go back to committing crimes somewhere else in the United States or move to another location as another person. Another thing which I've noticed, which is interesting, and this needs to be investigated, maybe some of these sanctuary cities, when they do get arrested, the jail bookings purposely messes their names up a little bit, so then it tricks the system. So when ICE looks around for these people's names, they're not finding anything. They're not finding hits on these people because the cities purposely are hiding and shielding them. Why in the world would they want to do that, though? Why in the world do we live in a country where you have factions within this country that would want these criminals in this country? I don't get it. I don't get it. Out of all the people in this country, you should be grateful that these people should be gone. You should be grateful that they're out there deported.
It's not enough. There's only like 100 at a time, 120 at a time, or 5 at a time. They're only arresting 5 at a time sometimes because they're tipped off that ICE is coming in, So you have hundreds at a time that be tipped off. And a lot of them are violent people that are being tipped off. And it's criminal. It's criminal. It's treason.
And getting rid of the people. Now, Holman's talking about the border crossings. At the border itself, again, we started out the segment, 229 crossings in this country in the last 24 hours. That is at literally, it has to be an all-time low. He posts, and Tom Homan has a Twitter account. This is his Twitter account, by the way. It's verified. It is his Twitter account right here, Tom Homan. Borders are for President Trump, the real Tom Homan. So it's not a fake account. I don't believe it's a fake account. I believe it's ran by him.
No,
in the last 24 hours, the U.S. border has encountered a total of 229 aliens across the entire southwest border. This is down from a high of 11,000 a day under Biden. I think it was 15,000 a day.
Yeah,
at one point, last November of 2023.
15,000.
November 2023, I think it was 15,000 a day. 5,000 were coming through in Eagle Pass alone. I started as a Border Patrol agent in 1984, and I don't remember the numbers even being that low. President Trump promised a secure border, and he is delivering.
Thousands.
Right?
Texas.
He says he started out as a Border Patrol agent since 1984. 40 years. 40 years. Tom Homan's been here 40 years, and he's never seen in his lifetime the amount of deportations, or not the amount of illegal crossings that low. 229 a day. Now, we have sources ourselves on the ground. We have sources on the ground in Acumba, California, Eagle Pass, and Swanton, Vermont. So I know a person that has border property on Swanton. We know, me and Magnolia know the person in Vermont that has border property. Just texted her the other day and asked her, what's up? What's going on? Are you still getting crosses? And she put a big no. She said, not since Trump has been in office. We haven't seen anyone in this area that crossed over the border. That's what she said. Good. Same thing applies in Acumba, California. We know someone that lives on the border. And behind their house is the borders. No wall back there, nothing. It's just a rickety old fence. And we asked them the other day, Magnolia texted her, is crossing. And she said, hardly any. She said just a woman and a child came across the other day, but nothing else. I know a rancher that lives between Eagle Pass and Quemado, which is a town north of Eagle Pass. I know a rancher lives on the border. I texted him the other day, what's up? Because his ranch right there was the Rio Grande north of Eagle Pass, and that's where they would cross over illegally all the time. I asked him, the people crossing over the border, what's going on? He said, nothing. So what Holman is saying of 229 people crossing over, I suspect, you won't find it. I don't know where these 229 people, where they came in at, but you're not finding anybody. It completely stopped. There's other people. Like I retweeted a good journalist. His name's Ori Ventura. He's News Nation. He actually is boots on the ground in. He tweets out, and he's a good reporter. He's on the boots on the ground in Eagle Pass. He's in Eagle Pass, and he tweeted this yesterday. He says, and he retweeted Holman talking about the 229, and he says, I'm on the ground here in Eagle Pass on the border. An area during peak illegals crossings during the Biden administration saw hundreds of migrants crossing illegally, with some days reaching the thousands. I've been here since last Friday and haven't witnessed a single migrant attempting to cross illegally. He hadn't witnessed a single migrant. They're not coming over anymore. It's over. So that's a huge...
Well, you see, that's a huge difference, yeah.
Catholic Charities and Jewish Family Services. And we're going to talk about Jewish Family Services because this was a big deal. Jewish Family Services was based in Southern California, San Diego area. And, we've done numerous videos regarding Jewish Family Services, working with the San Diego School District to process people, and also Jewish Family Services sending the migrants to hotels, the Ramada Inn, and different centers. Well, guess what? There's new reports out, and just like you heard Holman in one of the reports that we just played, they're shutting down. San Diego migrant shelter closes after no new arrivals since Trump took office. Over 100 employees laid off. The Jewish family...
And I said in his chat, I said, they should have never had a job. They should have never had one. Where, they just shit on Americans and not help the Americans at all whatsoever. These organizations let our people rot on the streets, their own feces and drugs and everything else, and not have a place to live, and Americans being kicked out of their homes for illegals and stuff like that. They should never have a job. They should be persecuted, in my opinion, but what they did.
Family Services of San Diego says it has received 0 new migrants since Donald Trump shut down the CBP One app after he was inaugurated. Jewish Family Services of San Diego, which has operated a regional migrant shelter for over 6 years, announced it would close its facility and lay off 115 employees due to changes in federal funding and policy.
Sex trafficking, human trafficking makes money. They don't care who gets hurt. They just want to make that money, make that money, make that money. And they operate under the guise of stupid religious BS. It's ridiculous. You don't have anything to do with your stupid gods. I mean, you have nothing to do with that. You're enabling criminal, crimes to keep happening. It's criminal what you guys do.
Jewish Family Services of San Diego is working to meet the evolving needs of the community in response to the recent and anticipated federal policy changes, the organization said. The non-governmental organization, aka NGO, said they had not received new asylum-seeking families or individuals since the CBP One app went down on January 20th. The app, which was a scam itself because the app would allow anyone to come to the border, share that app with Border Patrol, and then come on in. We're not saying come on in like JLR Investigate, come on in. Because it's crazy because I did a live one time on JLR when we were in Eagle Pass. I remember I started my live and there was a bunch of people crossing in on the border. I'm like, you know how I start out my live and I'm like, JLR Investigates, come on in, come on in. Well, I was saying that like, come on in, and behind me they were coming through the Rio Grande. I'm like, no, not them. You guys can't come on in. I'm talking about all of you out there. Come on in, not the people behind me that are crossing in. But yeah, they would come in on the CBP One app. They would come literally to the border wall. They would flash their app, and they would come right in. Or they go to a port of entry and they just walk in. And then they would end up going to Jewish Family Services of one of many NGOs, Jewish Family Services. Well, they shut down. As of end of December last year, more than 936,000 individuals had made appointments to be paroled through the app. A lot of people. Talk about almost a million. Jewish families.
These people have to go.
So, I got a report on Jewish Family Services. We're going to bring awareness, plus there's some numbers. They've received a lot of moolah. A lot of money. Yeah. Jewish Family Services, now defunded. This is a place where we've been, boots on the ground. I'm going to share a couple reports here. I'm also going to share me at one of the Jewish Family Services location, a case in point to show you the secrecy of the fences and the security guards, and they're all looking and cameras everywhere. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
A San Diego migrant shelter shutting its doors after receiving no migrants since President Trump's inauguration. National Border Patrol Council President Paul Perez will be here on that in just moments. But first, let's get the news from Bill Malugin. He is live out of Los Angeles for us. So, Bill, how many migrants had come to this NGO recently?
Sandra, believe it or not, literally 0. This NGO says not a single migrant has come to their shelter since President Trump took office. That shelter is now closing down and laying off 115 employees, and Trump has officially cut off their FEMA funding. Jewish Family Service San Diego has been running a rapid response migrant shelter that offered migrants things like care packages, food, legal services, travel coordination, medical screenings, immigration case management, you name it, they offered it. FEMA records show they had been allocated $22 million last year, but the NGO says They've never received any of that money. Jewish Family Service San Diego points the finger at President Trump, saying in part, quote, with migrants no longer able to use the CBP-1 application, the shelter has not received new families and individuals released from short-term federal custody. Due to recent changes in federal funding and policy, the shelter services will be paused until there's a better understanding of future community needs. Now, the
key word, paused, until the next Democrat president comes in and opens the floodgates. Again, I'm not on any political side, but I'm just saying Democrats are the ones that totally fuck this thing. So, I mean, to be honest, Clinton, they should have done something. Bush should have done something. It wasn't as bad, but yeah, they should have done something. Both sides could have done something, just shut the wall off, could have shut down illegal immigration, they did. And even Obama, he said that, he sent people back. I mean, Biden, he just went schizo on it.
The Trump White House is reacting, telling Fox News, quote, promises made, promises kept. President Donald Trump ended the app that facilitated the movement of illegal immigrants into our country. Let's hope these empty shelters are now used to take care of Americans in need. One San Diego County supervisor says the Biden administration released over 150,000 illegal aliens onto San Diego County streets just last year alone. That's Republican Jim Desmond, and he tells Fox he's happy to see the border now effectively closed with no more migrants going to that shelter.
I'm glad that this problem no longer exists. I'm glad that moving forward, this is not going to be a drain on the federal government, and maybe the federal government can start giving back to Americans as opposed to people who came across illegally.
Right.
And Supervisor Desmond tells us the number of smuggling boats landing on San Diego County shores has also plummeted since Trump took office, as the Coast Guard is now much more proactive in the area. Sandra?
Bill Malugin on that for us. Bill, thank you.
He does great reporting, Bill Malugin. Down on the border, met him numerous times down there. He's one of the, Trump likes him, believe it or not. The Trump administration likes his reporting. NGO, Jewish Family Services, this is another good follow, too. If you want to know everything about the migrant stuff, and one of the politicians, District 5, San Diego County Supervisor Jim Desmond, he speaks a lot about the issue. If you ever want to get educated on what's going on down there, he actually follows me. He's good. He's good.
Everybody
he's good.
He
talks about the border down there. He's one of the District 5 supervisors that speaks out against this ridiculousness over the years.
And the thing is, the stupid news skews it, saying that these people, are asylum seekers or people that are escaping persecution. That's complete BS. You don't have millions flooding the borders that need escape asylum. Also, is the citizens' duty to create a militia to overthrow the government. You're supposed to topple your government. We're not responsible for you. We're responsible for our own country, our own people. We're not here to take care of you when we got people dying on the streets, people that are homeless, and people that are not getting health care. You're getting everything for free. You got all this stuff for free. And Americans suffered through that. Died. Some were even killed. You can talk about other crimes too. That was being committed too.
He calls it out. So if you ever want to get
mainstream news doesn't report that. They don't.
Information and knowledge about what's going on in the San Diego area, because San Diego area, as you heard, 150,000 street dumps. If they would go to the Irish Transit Center, there's like a bus station there, a little trolley station there, south of San Diego. It's called the Irish Transit Center. We've done reports there. That's where they would do these street releases, and everyone that would come in on the CBP-1 app, they would get processed by Border Patrol, and Border Patrol would take buses to the Irish Transit Center. They would just release them into the streets. They just released 150,000. I think the numbers were much more. And then they would end up going to Jewish Family Services, and I think there was also a Catholic Charities out there in California too, but it was majority Jewish Family Services. Jewish Family Services were in this up to their eyeballs. We don't know how much money they really received. We heard the numbers 22 million last year. I think it's much more secret money and all types of things, because it's just their operation was so massive and so secretive when it comes to these hotels, using the San Diego Unified School District as places to put these migrants, and also these secret warehouses and facilities. So let's get some more information about Jewish Family Services. There's a few reports out. Plus, I'll show you an incident that I had at Jewish Family Services. They were watching me and everything like that, security. But here's some more clips about Jewish Family Services. The more you know. You need to educate yourself on this. We're going to get, we're sponge, we're depot of knowledge on this channel.
Yes, we are.
Migrant stuff. We're on point. This is interesting and fascinating stuff.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight on ABC 10 News at 11. I'm Max Goldwasser. A local nonprofit learning how to adjust to rapid reductions in federal funding. Jewish Family Services say they will be pausing their migrant shelter services until further notice. Just weeks ago, President Trump signed an executive order that would freeze federal funding for immigration services in sanctuary cities like San Diego. That order was blocked, but there are still questions about that funding and where it goes moving forward. ABC 10 News reporter Danny Miskell joins us in studio for more on what the future looks like for JFS.
Jewish Family Services may be pausing their migrant shelter services for now, but that doesn't mean their work stops. The nonprofit says it's now shifting its focus onto pro bono immigration legal services because with all the rapid changes to immigration policies...
This is the thing. They don't have any constitutional rights. Piece of shit organizations. And this is the thing, is that people say these illegals, what these stupid lawyers are lying and say they have constitution. No, they don't. You have to be an American citizen to be afforded these constitutional rights. If you're an illegal, you have no rights. Even I was told that when I was younger. I was told, if you're an illegal, you have no fucking rights. You piece of shit. You don't. And this is what news organizations are saying too. They spin things. They flip it. And say that these people's constitutional rights have been violated. They don't have any. They have none. None. Zero. Zip. I don't mean to sound hateful or anything like that. It's just I don't like what's happening to our people. And also to, tribal people that's happening. And a lot of tribal leaders are pissing me off because they think this is okay. Let them all flood through. And they don't care. They don't give a shit about their own people. That's like, fuck you. You're letting, women and girls, kids are going missing for sex trafficking. Gone missing. Drugs have gone up on tribal lands. These piece of shit tribal leaders are letting it happen. I got beef. I'm pissed because they're allowing it to happen. And I got some tribal in me. And this isn't getting out. I'm pissed. I'm very pissed off. And how they see it is, it's like, well, this happened. This is what happens with empires. Empires rise, empires fall. It's going to happen. It's like, F you. You don't care about your own people. You don't care about the crime that's going on. I got a big problem. I got beef with that. That you don't care about your own people, your own women and children going missing, kidnapping. F you. I got no respect for you. None. And these drugs, killing people. I got stuff from these, Indian tribal nations about what's going on. I know what's going on. I know what's going on with American citizens, with drugs, sex trafficking, 500,000 kids missing. That's too many to be ignored. Piece of shit news and everything. I don't know if she is. But most news is lying their asses off. And we need to wake the fuck up. People that aren't already awake need to wake the fuck up.
In the last month, they're now seeing a huge demand for it.
We've been planning for the new administration, and we've run through a variety of scenarios. A complete freeze on funding, frankly, was not one of the scenarios that we anticipated.
This was from a few weeks ago. We spoke with the CEO of Jewish Family Services, Michael Hopkins, when the news broke that the Trump administration was freezing federal dollars towards migrant services. While that executive order is tied up in the courts, the nonprofit is still moving forward.
As an organization, I think that we have a pretty strong muscle to handle these situations.
That's why Jewish Family Services says they're now bolstering their staff and volunteers to offer legal services to as many different groups of migrants as possible.
Why?
Unaccompanied minors, dreamers, migrants who are about to be deported.
Unaccompanied minors. Wow. All this stuff. You piece of shit organization. I'm pissed. It pisses me off because it's personal to me. I've been homeless. I don't like to suffer and everything else. So this is a lot more personal to me than it is to a lot of other people because I've been through pain and suffering and all this stuff. And you have illegals getting all this stuff for free. And you don't know what kids are being sex trafficked or trafficked with drugs. You don't know. There needs to be DNA testing to know who's the real parent and who's not. And you can't just say, oh, I'm their uncle, I'm their aunt. You ain't gonna have the kid. You're not. We're not responsible. You don't deserve our money. People are suffering and dying because of your BS that you're doing. You are criminal pieces of trash. You're lower trash.
Deported and more.
And so right now we're trying to best meet the folks that have arrived within the last 2-3 months that are here in San Diego, and we're gonna continue to try to meet their needs.
This comes as Jewish Family Services is pausing its migrant shelter services, where they've been helping hundreds of thousands of migrants with temporary shelter, food, travel, and more. But
what about Americans? What about Americans? Our people that are suffering. You POS. What about our people? Our people are suffering. Don't have housing, nothing. No jobs. They're not getting help. They're not getting benefits. They're not getting money or whatever. They're not getting money. They are. F you.
When the CBP One app went dark last month, families and individuals stopped coming to their migrant shelter. The shelter's pause is also causing many to lose their jobs.
There is no federal funding at all. That's come to a complete standstill.
Money is tight right now, which is why Immigration Legal Services will have to be pro bono. The nonprofit says they were allocated $22 million federal dollars last September, and they still haven't seen a dime. We emailed the White House Sunday night asking what's going to happen to...
This is a question. I don't believe all that. I don't, because if they did have all that money, they wouldn't be able to house them. They wouldn't be able to give them food, shelter. Thank you, JLR. Exactly. You're saying call it BS. There isn't. If you're not getting all that money, where's it being laundered to? Other organizations, I think, the organization gets that part of the pie, or they just... But I don't believe that.
That allocation of $22 million.
I don't believe that. When they have housing for them, and they're giving them food, all this stuff, when you're out of money, you cannot house them. You can't pay for electricity. You cannot pay for heating. You cannot pay for cool air. You can't. You can't pay for all that. I know because I've been with some charity organizations before. I've actually been with, so I do know about this. If you're out of money, the only thing you can do is get pastry type stuff or sometimes vegetables. And what you do is you go to stores that they don't have, they put out the food that's not so good anymore, and that's usually pastries. And you have these other organizations though, but that's for Americans. It's for Americans that are on the streets. It's not for illegals. There's a difference. So if you don't have money, you can't get the food. You can't pay for electricity, water. Water is big. Water in California especially. Very regulated. Costs a lot of money. So is electricity and stuff. It's gone up. And they're saying they don't have money? Bullshit. They have lots of money to power up these farmhouses, give them shelter and food and everything else.
We're waiting to hear back. In studio, I'm Danny Miskell, ABC 10 News.
Interesting. Well, they shouldn't get the $22 million, right? $22 million. And who's that Hopkins guy? That Hopkins guy should be investigated by the Trump administration for enabling and shielding. So Jewish Family Services, Catholic Charities, interesting. Catholic Charities, Jewish Family Services, now going to allocate their resources to do pro bono work. So who's going to fund that? To help people know their rights or help people go navigate through the process. But isn't that Title 8, what is it, 1324, harboring? Isn't that, I gotta remember, 1324. Title 8, 1324. Holmes says it all the time. Harboring illegals. Jewish Family Services. Here's another thing, and one more thing, and then I want to show you my incident there at Jewish Family Services to keep you informed.
I have to say again, not all illegals are bad. I don't even like a lot of the hate that I'm saying. I don't like having that hate. I hate it. But we're having our own people suffer and dying. And these guys don't deserve what they're getting at the cost of us. In order for us to help others, we have to help ourselves. These are facts. We have to help ourselves before we can help others. I don't like sounding hateful. I hate that part, which is why I don't like doing all this. I don't. But I want to go over the laws and everything else. You know, what's constitutional, what isn't. And I want people to be educated about that. And I don't like how different sides can get hateful. I don't. And I don't like to sound hateful. What I'm hateful on is people getting all stuff for free, service for free, while us Americans are suffering. It pisses me off. These other organizations, I think they should fry in a terrible way for what they've done. Because they don't care about us. Now, if you're really persecuted, you really need to run from the government. You seek asylum. You do it legal way and everything. If you're really ready for that, I do have sympathy. And I'd try to protect them. I would. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to, because I know it's like to go through pain and suffering too. And just me thinking about it almost gives me tears in my eyes, because most of my life has been with pain and suffering. Sicknesses and everything else. So I actually do. Even when I say I don't have sympathy, I do have some. I do lie about that. I do. And that's just my anger taking over.
To who these people are.
Migrants requesting asylum were bused to shelters run by NGOs like Catholic Charities and Jewish Family Services under the Biden administration. According to Jewish Family Services CEO, since October 2018, Migrant Shelter Services helped nearly 250,000 people seeking asylum. The organization provided them temporary shelter, food, case management, medical, and legal services, among other things. January 20th, when the federal government shut down the CBP One app, which allowed migrants to claim asylum at the border, JFS says it stopped receiving new families at shelter services like this one. Folks, can we talk to you? JFS says no clients means potential layoffs and redirecting its resources. In part of a statement released Monday, JFS CEO Michael Hopkins wrote, due to recent changes in federal funding and policy, the SDRRN Migrant Shelter Services will be paused until there is better understanding of future community needs. Staffers do not seem to know much about it.
They mentioned it, but they didn't say when.
The statement didn't mention how many shelter workers would be affected, only that they were given 60 days notice. We are working to identify any potential opportunities for re-engagement with our valued shelter services staff in other departments in the future, the CEO wrote.
Other departments.
JFS also blamed
They're going elsewhere.
funding, not just policy changes, although the CEO did not speak specifically
Let's see
to the
if
amount of
buildings
money
totally
or where
destroyed.
exactly it was coming from. Last January, JFS received $22 million from FEMA to fund its migrant shelter services.
That's what they do. They roll in on buses and go to Jewish Family Services. So why isn't Jewish Family Services instead of just saying, okay, we're not going to receive money anymore to do these migrants, that we're going to shift focus and help veterans, homeless American people that are in the streets of Southern California struggling, that need food in their stomach and a hot and a cot. How come they're not helping them? How come they're going to sit there and say, we're going to continue to be part of this migrant stuff and center our entire business platform based off the migrant stuff? Well, probably because they've been compromised. Probably because they work hand in hand with enablers, cartels. Who's that Hopkins guy?
They do.
I mean, you would think that they would sit there and want to work now and help Americans.
Stuff.
No, they don't want to. They want to continue and escalate this and say, we're going to continue to help and we're going to continue to help the migrants know their legal rights and pro bono services. Look at this. This is a video I made. This is weird. I don't know if you want to see this, but this is a case. I was at one of the Jewish Family Services. I was at a lot of the facilities, the secret migrant hotels. This was interesting.
Jonathan Lee Riches investigates boots on the ground, a covert operation right here in back of me. This is a place called Jewish Family Services. It's on Pacific Highway in San Diego, California.
It's like a
looks like there's some sort of human trafficking going on at this facility right here. It looks like people that crossed into the United States illegally are coming here in vehicles, and they're exiting the vehicles and going into this building. There's a bus here. Buses are coming in and out of here. They've been putting the green, they put all this green fencing so you can't see what's going on. I want to show you some video footage about this place. You decide what in the world is going on here. It's called Jewish Family Services. There's something strange going on here, folks. Check it out.
Jewish Family Services.
Let's see what's that? Let's see what they're saying. I don't have any people talk about chat that come by, so I don't see what they're saying. I'm Jewish, there's nothing Jewish, there ain't, it's all bullshit, yeah.
Human smuggling.
Yep. This is about being kickbacks,
human
money,
smuggling operation, Jewish Family Services. So people would come and get dropped off in vehicles, vans, buses,
cartels,
with all their luggage and suitcases. We're talking about children, women, men.
Yeah, they use religious terms for cover.
Now watch them close the gate on me and come out and start watching me. There's the buses. And they load people on buses.
Yeah.
And I guess they send them to the airport, send them to bus station, another Greyhound bus station. Cameras everywhere. It's a really covert secret operation. It was a human smuggling hub in my opinion.
It is a hub. It is a hub. They have huge buildings, acres upon acres, dozens of acres. It's like farming. There's farming illegals to make money off of them, and they give it to them instead of American people and stuff. And it's criminal. And you don't know if these kids' parents are really their parents or not.
And I am delighted to see the new administration recognize what these NGOs have done and instantly defunded them out of existence. Look, they would load them up on the buses.
Cars, everything else. This JLR investigates.
Secret.
They got a lot to hide. A lot of criminal activity. Yeah. They use religious names as a cover for the criminal activity at these sites.
Jewish family
that they've been having.
There's another site?
Wow.
Oh, same site.
Security closed the gates. They want people to see what's going on there.
Yeah, Joe, you should have got Joe.
Definitely people. Look.
There are people trying to harass it
Peekaboo.
Too. Yeah, it's called freedom of press, bitch.
Peekaboo.
You can't do anything. Yeah. Can't do anything about it.
Who's out there filming? Go shut the gates down so they can't see. Who's out there filming? Who's out there on a public street filming?
I wish people could have
LR
got drones.
investigates.
Don't worry,
We've been on Jewish Family Services for years now.
Nothing Jewish about it. There's
So
nothing
for
Jewish
me,
about it.
it's refreshing to see that these places have been defunded. Now you got to go find all those missing children. The 300,000 plus missing children out there that are out there that been funneled through places like Jewish Family Services.
See the
sex traffickers,
and Catholic Charity. Security, and then you see the people walking past with backpacks.
Annunciation House, Mission Border Hope, Migrant Resource Center, San Antonio, the San Diego Unified School District. Oh yeah, this was their big security guard, wasn't it?
What's this guy doing?
Yeah, look, peekaboo.
Yeah, so it says to all the government owes us. Yeah, they do, but we'll never see it because both sides are corrupt too, and they're going to want to just take it for themselves. That's what government is. But.
He's peeking out. Look,
I think he started filming.
He's peeking out.
Peek.
All these NGOs and how much they've received in 2024, fiscal year 2024. And this is shocking to the core. Now, we talked about Jewish Family Services, but the number one people that receive so much money.
I don't want to use all this content either. I want to do other stuff too as well.
Look at this right here. He tweeted this out. Yeah.
Okay. Notable FEMA SSP special grants of 10 million plus allocated to NGOs, local governments for migrant services fiscal year 2024. This is Bill Milligan. Catholic Charities organization. Criminal organization. 21 million for illegals. This is San Diego. Again, another 19 million for illegals. In San Antonio, almost 17 million. You can say it's 17. Catholic Charities, that is SA, where's that? 10, almost 11 million. City of LA, 21 million. 2 illegals. Here's another one. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, 15 million. 2 illegals while we're suffering on the streets here. Let me see. Save the Children. Wow. 16 million. Pretty much is 16 million. Jewish Family Services, 22 million. He's died. 77 million. State of Arizona, 19 million. Pima, Arizona, another 20 million. Pima, Arizona again, 18 million. Hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. This is just this report, what's known right here. Billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars to be given to them. Okay, New York City at 20 million, Pima at 21 million, 18 million Pima, Maricopa, Arizona 11 million, San Diego 19, it's pretty much about 20 million, City of Atlanta, almost 11 million, City of Denver, we're not Trinity or Rockland, as well as the other places, almost 11 million, bordering 12.6 million. City of Chicago, 12.288, almost $12.3 million. This is just one report out of hundreds of reports of money being laundered.
And it said notable FEMA SSP grants of 10 million plus allocated. This is FEMA.
Yeah, this is just FEMA. What about other NGOs, other organizations?
Allocated to NGOs and local governments for migrant services in year 2024. Look at this list.
641 million on that. That's supposed to go towards Americans with the hurricanes. And FEMA said, no money for you. 700 at most. That's for a whole family. People were killed by FEMA, not purposely, not going into these places, keeping other relief workers off of site in North Carolina, in these states. They harassed us. They used helicopters to harass relief workers, used the police, criminal thugs that wouldn't allow relief workers to get to those in need that were dying and need their medications.
Catholic Charities, San Diego, $21 million. Catholic Charities of San Diego, again, 19 million. Catholic Charities of San Antonio, 16 million. Catholic Charities of San Antonio, again, 10 million.
Well, wasn't there a wasn't there a disaster that happened in the Carolinas with Hurricane Helene? Hurricanes? People that were suffered from the hurricanes?
Yes.
They couldn't even get more than a $750 check from FEMA because they ran out of money. 641. That was just for 2024. What is the numbers for 2023? What are the numbers for 2022? What are the numbers for 2021? Those numbers probably total over $1 billion. Easy. Billions. Those billions could at least temporarily assisted everybody affected by Hurricane Helene in the Carolinas. At least get people some sort of housing, some sort of FEMA trailer, some sort of, groceries and supplies. Not that 700.
So Magnolia says, save the children. Yeah, we saw that as well. Wrapped up in scandals. Yeah. So much for saving the children. As long as it's not American children,
disgrace,
it's
slap
okay.
in the face.
Is there something wrong with that? Yes.
But this is why. This is why this is all coming to light. It's all coming to light.
Froze to death.
Let's talk about Catholic Charities.
Carolina.
There are another.
You got West Virginia. You got South Carolina. I mean, people in Congress shouldn't even have a job either.
Catholic Charities is a gigantic
they're criminals
fraud
on
in
both
my
sides.
mind. We've been calling out Catholic.
And Congress keeps on getting themselves pay raises for not helping the people enough that they should. They're not doing enough. They're not. They put on that. They argue with the other side. Put on a show. It's like Hollywood. They put on a theatrical show in a circus. You're supposed to enjoy it, act like they care. Where's the amendments? Where's the bills? And you find out that all these bills Congress pass have pork barrel spending given to special interest organizations like this. It didn't go all for infrastructure. It didn't go where people thought it was going to go. And this is both Republicans and Democrats. This politicians do this all around the world. They do this. Scheming and lying.
Catholic Charities. They're part of this mix too. As we reported,
it's called fraud.
They're shutting down too.
I can't blame totally the Biden administration. Biden is the worst. He is. What he did is criminal. And everything is treason what he did. But the other presidents, George W., Obama, Clinton, they should have done more to stop.
They're shutting down their operations.
Creating amendments.
Two.
Constitutional.
Catholic Charities San Antonio, Catholic Charities Houston, Catholic Charities Dallas. They're different branches, but they're all laying off employees because they don't get the money anymore. Because now this stuff is over. Stuff is over. It's over.
Let's go here. I want it's only over till the next president. They're to open. You see, even if the next president is Republican, there's to be a Democrat one. And both sides are so polarized, weaponized against each other. They're to go extreme. Okay? They're to reopen everything. They're to say, destroy the fences, cut the wire.
But I don't even think Catholic Charities should open back up. I think they should be shut down. I think Jewish Family Services, Catholic Charities should be shut down completely and never be open. And I think the people, the CEOs, should be hauled into Congress and testify under a court of law, or testify in court, or testify in front of Congress. Raise your right hand.
Congress only puts on an act. It's only a few times, I think, throughout history, maybe probably only two, where they've held somebody in contempt or criminal charges. That's what judges are supposed to. That's what district attorneys. This is what district attorneys are supposed to do. They're supposed to put out warrants and stuff like this, and they're supposed to have investigations. Congress is supposed to be for the big whales, the big sharks and stuff like that.
And I think all of them should be investigated and prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Where did all that money go? Where did all the people go that they helped facilitate? Where did all those missing children go?
Yes, they should all be investigated.
100% involved with this illegal immigration operation that happened in the last 4 years. I think it goes all the way to the Vatican, personally, when it comes to Catholic Charities. I think this thing goes all.
Yeah, it does. It does go to the Vatican.
All the way to the Vatican.
It does.
I was going to tweet out something yesterday. I said, Magnolia, should I tweet out? But I just never did it. But I was like, I think the Vatican had something over Joe Biden's head. Because I think the Vatican's whole philosophy is immigration, migrants, refugees. They don't care at what expense. Refugees, you got to take them in. You got to take them in. You got to take them in. It was crazy what we've seen in the last 4 years. Absolutely crazy.
They're not refugees. They're not refugees.
A sharp decline coming after President Trump effectively closed the border to migrants, and many of them seeking asylum in January,
they do have
leaving many shelters
the Vatican
wondering
does.
what
They
comes
do have blood on their hands.
Those shelters warning they may not have to close, not just because of the lack of migrants, but because of a lack of cash. So they may have to close. Key funds for the shelters are drying up. Another casualty of President Trump's federal budget slashing spree. Joining us now is News Nation national correspondent Jorge Ventura, who's there in Eagle Pass, Texas, at one of those shelters. Jorge, what's the latest?
Well, I'm right outside Mission Border Hope. It's one of the many shelters here in the Texas border here in Eagle Pass. And this same time last year, you normally would see buses transporting migrants. You would see employees delivering food and providing care. And now today, the shelter is completely closed. And this is a story of many shelters across the border now that illegal crossings have plummeted to around 600 per day. Most of these shelters during the peak illegal crossings under the Biden administration were seeing up to 1,000 people per day. Some are now seeing single digits of migrants arrive, while others are seeing zero. And during those peak illegal crossings under the Biden administration, many of these
So think about that. There's 12 months in a year, 1,000 people a day. That's 120,000 people.
shelters actually reached over capacity. This comes as President Trump continues to crack down on illegal immigration, but also his messaging on mass deportations have played a key role. But even before the election, illegal crossings were trending downward, resulting in shelters.
Oh, no more funding for Catholic charities. It's over, folks.
I want to move on.
In it up to
this.
We like to put Catholic charities out there.
In more border-related news now, earlier this week, the Trump administration took back over $80 million from New York City in FEMA funds that were issued during the previous administration to help for the care of migrants. The head of the Migrant Center...
Yeah, exactly what Magnolia says. Don't worry, they'll figure out a new scam before, that's what they've been doing. Ever since Trump got into office, they've been ahead of this. They're figuring out new ways to commit fraud and scams
changing how they use those funds. Sister Norma Pimentel, who is the executive director of Catholic Charities Rio Grande Valley, says since Trump took office, some days they haven't had any migrants released to them by Border Patrol at the Humanitarian Respite Center in downtown McAllen. And although they have received over $7 million in FEMA funds the last fiscal year, Sister Pimentel says she is not using the money unless she has more people to help.
Our numbers are
illegals.
Almost to zero. That we do have 1 to 3 families that maybe one day arrive and the next day nobody, and the next day maybe one family. It's very uncertain right now as to who we're receiving, and how many. And so those funds are subject to those because we have to report it according to that number that every single individual has. And so if we don't have families, then we don't spend money.
Democratic Congressman Henry Cuellar helped start the FEMA food and shelter program back in 2017 with $30 million to reimburse border communities for migrant care. But this has since been extended to cities nationwide, and funding was $650 million in fiscal year 2024. Now, Republicans in Congress want $300 billion for border security, including detention beds and technology, as part of that budget bill that is currently being negotiated in Washington.
$300 billion for border security. As Tom Homan said, there's no price to securing the border. This woman here, I believe, is corrupt to the core. She was in it up to her eyeballs. Sister Norma, we've discussed her. We've actually did a live stream when she came out of Catholic Charities, when we were at the Catholic Charities Rio Grande Center in McAllen. She didn't answer. She looked at me and walked away when I was asking her questions. She apparently, before she would receive all this money, she would be hanging out in restaurants with some of the Democratic officials, right? Sister Norma. So, no more funding for Catholic charities. It's over, folks.
She's no sister. She's a criminal. She's a part of RICO's. I mean, what they do is part of a RICO organization, a criminal organization like the mob. Like the mafia, how they get money and everything, international money laundering, and stuff like that.
It is over. I do want to share a report right here from Allie Bradley, because she tweeted out yesterday on the 17th about, she shares a little bit of report, and she talks about the sister. She talks about the sister a little bit. Listen to this report right here. She tweeted this out, talking about just the money in general. She tweeted out, FEMA under fire. The Trump administration is taking aim at the agency's financial allocations after millions were spent to assist migrants who had crossed into the country over the last 4 years. Catholic Charities, one of the biggest NGOs assisting migrants, received more than $90 million in reimbursement last year alone in 2 waves. The first provided $41 million, the second $50 million, for a total of $91 million. I talked with the head of the organization in the Rio Grande back in January of 2022. She talked about the reimbursement, taxpayers, and buying items, tickets for migrants. After our interview, she had an interesting request. She wanted a question response omitted, even though I informed her it would be recorded and posted. Here is a handy dandy breakdown of the grants funding provided to the shelter and services program. For fiscal year 2024, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security will provide $640 million of available funds to enable non-federal entities to offset allowable costs incurred for services associated with non-citizen migrant arrivals in their communities.
The operation
is still, in this tweet right
still be going. Americans elite,
saying he wants to terminate FEMA. So President Trump is saying he wants to terminate FEMA. FEMA has been in the news quite a lot lately, in part because a lot of people have criticized the agency for what they say is not providing enough financial relief to people impacted by the hurricanes, like in North Carolina. And people have pointed back at FEMA, saying that they have provided more financial aid to migrants crossing the border illegally. But the president is actually firing 4 high-level FEMA employees because they apparently paid for luxury hotel rooms for some of these migrants. And we know FEMA was actually reimbursing the NGOs.
So we got, I guess you could say, got lucky to get reimbursed to some of the efforts that we've been doing for so long, and so that's good. I'm glad and that is taxpayers' money.
And the NGOs will buying things like welcome back.
We do purchase things that are necessary, they're essential, basic things like toothbrush and toothpastes, or maybe underwears, because we have to buy underwears because we don't always get them donated.
They were buying bus tickets, plane tickets for these migrants.
We definitely encourage for the family to be able to come up with that ticket, that transportation. And if we end up paying any tickets, it will be because maybe less than 1% of everybody that we get.
Again, being reimbursed with taxpayer dollars.
We have requested like a little bit over $1 million, and but I don't know that we've received it 100%, but yes, it's possible that we could even get more.
Then she asked me to delete the interview.
She's sharing screenshots of that.
She actually tried to avoid me the first time we had an interview set up.
Oh, please delete the interview.
Oh, okay, well, we'll see. Maybe she's... And I kind of chased her down. She said she'd meet with me. Maybe she doesn't know who I am, but I'm sure she's seen my... She's getting in the car. No, you're not, Sister Norma.
Yeah.
I'm gonna... No, ma'am. You're supposed to meet with us. Sister Norma?
Yeah, go after her.
Norma?
Chase her down.
Hi,
Chase
we're meeting?
Dog down.
Okay, she's saying give her a minute. I'm Allie Bradley. We have a meeting this morning? Yes. So now Elon Musk and Doge are going after these NGOs. They're auditing where this FEMA funding was going and how it was being used.
Why are you wearing that?
Great tweet.
Million to non-federal entities through the Shelter Services Program, allocated services shelter program. Agency also won $340.9 million through SSP shelter. Those are shelters. Competitive shelters, stuff like that, other shelters. So, explanation: the SSP, the Shelter Services Program, helps non-federal entities provide shelter to other services. Non-citizen, this is keyword, non-citizen migrants over Americans. They give it to them, not us. After they are released from the Departments of Homeland Security, the program is administered by FEMA. Doesn't care about Americans. Partnership U.S. Customs Border Patrol, which I don't care about Americans whatsoever. $207 million was distributed to Shelter Services Program A, LOFO, $25 million, and any unclaimed SSP. This is Shelter Services Program. Round 1 funds distributed to SSPA. LOFO remaining $40.8 million was allocated on August 28, 2024. Total allocation was $340 million. That's just what they know versus. So, anyways, that's it. I see people come and go, and that's because of my language. I'm pissed off because this shouldn't happen. People get pissed off about it. That's also on them as well. It's just, I see people, Americans in pain and suffering. And these people that shouldn't be here, Americans, we got to take care of ourselves first. And these people are criminals. It's a RICO thing. It is a criminal organization. Anyways, I always say leave. Like, otherwise I don't know why the hell they're watching.